Chapter 38. What are you doing? Father Zhao asked as he looked at Yuan Zi, who was fooling around. I'm just bowing to your cat. Our $1 million order depends on your cat. Who knows what good things your cat will do for us in the future. Yuan Zi straightened the chopsticks in the black rice porridge. Come on, another bow. Do you believe in ghosts and gods? I don't remember the old man having such a tendency. The Jiaopa said. The old man is a pure researcher. He doesn't believe in those things, but the old lady does. The few of them would also mention old Master Yuan when they were chatting with each other. It was as if old Master Yuan was still there, and they would not deliberately avoid it. Yuan Zi put the bowl and chopsticks back on the table, turned around and sat down. He asked the Jiaopa, "Oh right, you are going to the neighboring province for a meeting the day after tomorrow, right?" "Yes, there is an annual academic meeting there. I'm going to attend it. A few big names will be there this year. It's a rare opportunity." The Jiaopa said. That's great. After the annual meeting, you can come with me to take a look at the equipment. Yesterday, I contacted the boss of a biological company there. His company had an accident, and he is not going to continue operating the company. He is going to sell some of the equipment. I contacted him and asked him to keep it for us. We can go take a look at it. Some of the equipment is still under warranty. The boss said that the warranty cards and receipts are still with them. I'm thinking that if it's okay to look at them, we should buy them first. After all, a new equipment is too expensive. Some of the businesses our company is taking on now don't need those high-end and complicated functions. It's fine as long as they are practical. Okay, I'll contact you then. When are you leaving? I'm going tomorrow with an engineer. I'm just going to take a look first. After all, the second-hand equipment is worth tens of thousands. Some of them cost at least 100,000. The boss won't sell the more expensive equipment at a low price. For a giant like Changwei Group, this amount of money is nothing. But we are tight on funds now. We can't waste money. The Jiaopa was going on a business trip. There were many things he had to arrange before he left. Jiao Ma's follow-up examination results were very good. She had almost recovered. Jiao Pa could also go on his business trip without worrying too much about his family. As for her work in the institute, the most stressful time had passed, and the research project was progressing smoothly. EXIN had already submitted a paper with a good impact factor to a foreign magazine ahead of her classmates, and another paper was still being prepared. She was probably going to be selected for an excellent master's degree and a national scholarship next year. Jiao Pa was on a business trip and would only be back in 3 or 4 days. Zheng Tan also didn't go out at night during this period. The temperature at night was low. Now, Zheng Tan could not wear a real leather jacket or a down jacket like when he was still a human. He only had short hair. Jiao Ma had bought Zheng Tan a small cotton padded jacket for pet cats, but Zheng Tan never wore it. It was very restrictive and troublesome. He couldn't even stretch himself to climb a tree. Therefore, now Zheng Tan would only go out for a walk during the day, except for running and climbing trees in the morning. The weather was good, and the sun was just right. Otherwise, why would he go out? Looking for trouble? Zheng Tan went to the woods to play for half a day in the morning. He went home for lunch at lunchtime, and then wandered to the Institute of Biological Sciences. He looked around and found that the window of Jiao Pa's office was not locked. Zheng Tan jumped from the branch to the windowsill and looked inside. If there were other people, he wouldn't go in. Fortunately, there was only EXIN in the office. At this moment, EXIN was lying on the table taking a nap. EXIN was not other people. Speaking of which, this guy could be regarded as half a nanny of the Jiao family. He had helped to pick up children, take care of cats, and help Jiao Pa with his undergraduate thesis. Where else could he find such a good student? Zheng Tan opened the window with his paws and jumped in. The computer was on. EXIN was sorting out his second thesis. It was all in English. Zheng Tan didn't understand many professional names and Latin words. He was too lazy to read them. He was not interested. However, Jingtian was interested in a small notebook next to Exian. This was not Exian's experimental record book. Jingtian had seen the experimental record books used by people at the Institute of Biological Sciences. They were much bigger than this one. However, it was obvious that this small notebook was frequently used. Could it be that there was another little secret? Jingtian was interested. He was so bored that his balls hurt. He had to find some fun to make himself happy and kill time. Creak creak creak, hee. Hearing the sound from the side, Jingtian was about to open the small notebook. He thought that his secret had been discovered. He looked up and saw that Exian was still sleeping. There was no sign of her waking up. *ck, she was grinding her teeth while taking a nap. Not only was she grinding her teeth, but she was also smiling. It was very scary. Jingtian pulled his ears and withdrew his attention. He hooked his paws and opened the small notebook. A lot of things were recorded in the notebook. The first few pages were brief records of some large academic reports. Although Exian's handwriting was not very good, the format was neat and the records were in order. However, Jingtian was still quite disappointed. Anyway, he felt that these things were boring. Just as he was about to close it, Jingtian's gaze fell on the edge of the small notebook. It was obvious that the back of the small notebook was often flipped. Therefore, Jingtian simply flipped to the last few pages of the small notebook. Then, Jingtian saw Exian's accompanying records and excerpts. The more he read, the more speechless Jingtian was. There were many excerpts of poems in it. There were quite a lot of types recorded in it, but it was obviously not the ordinary poems, but professional poems. Why did he say that? There was a lingering type, such as, I think of you like an antibody thinking of an antigen. Your beauty is the choline that makes me impulsive. Several spring and autumn seasons are countless sleepless nights. Every base represents our eternal vow. Looking forward to such a day we can meet again, intertwining into the most beautiful double helix in the world. There was a sorrow type, such as, heart dividing like the centromere in the late stage of cell division. We are also like the chromosome moving to a different side, covered by the fog-long pavilion, ancient road, fragrant grass and green sky. Only our figures are fading finally like the chromosome at the end, unable to see. There was a confusion type, such as, the afterglow of the setting sun. The plants in the afterglow are translucent, as if you can see wisps of oxygen emerging from the chloroplasts. Reducing carbon dioxide to sugar, silently gathering energy. Everything is so hurried. Are they also worried about the silence in the night, hesitation in the silence? There was also a nauseating type, such as, you are the nucleus, you control my genetics and metabolism. You are the mitochondria, without you I lose energy. You are the chloroplasts, let me have new nourishment. You are the lysosome, you can dissolve everything in me at any time. Actually, you are the ribosome, capture me like amino acids. You are the endoplasmic reticulum, process me like protein. You are the Golgi, wrap me up and give me up so easily. Why? I still love you so much. There was even a deep type, such as, the figure of the great man gradually drifts away like individuals turning into clouds in the river of time. Their thoughts are precipitating in the think tank like genes in the gene library, passed down from generation to generation, reorganizing the minds of the predecessors, making us no longer simple like genetic recombination. Variations are numerous and common. Quietly, I think my kind of thinking, is it genetic recombination or mutation? The person who wrote these poems, Jingtian, could only think that the person must have been possessed by deoxynucleotides, ribonucleotides, and amino acids at that moment. Closing the small book, Jingtian wagged his tail, jumped off the desk, and left through the window. When he left, he closed the window on his way out. Coming out of the biology building, Jingtian walked to the East family area. Walking in the flowers and grass, when he passed a corner, Jingtian heard someone talking about something again. Jingtian often heard it in the past 2 days. It was said that a senior student was found hanged in the dormitory. The rumor was that it was because he failed too many subjects and was too stressed. When Jingtian heard it, he didn't think too much about it. This kind of thing was not rare, and it was not an isolated phenomenon in a certain university. I heard from my classmate that the police found some sexy handcuffs, tape, masks, and even anesthetics in his cupboard. There was also a small DVD player in the locked cupboard, and the CD case was filled with some perverted and heavy-flavored discs. Jingtan's footsteps paused. Hearing this, he suddenly thought of something. Did Director Zhao and Zhao Luo really do something? That's quite efficient. Also, Jingtan heard from Jiao Pa and Yuan Zi that Director Zhao had some background. He could even find out the details of his cat, so it shouldn't be difficult for Director Zhao to find someone. Also, he was ruthless enough to cut off the person's escape route. After perking up his ears to eavesdrop on the students' discussion, Jingtan pulled his ears and continued to walk towards the Eastern family area. However, before he could take 2 steps, Jingtan heard a brother on a bicycle shouting to his classmates, "Quick, there's a large group of foreign guests heading towards the International Academic Lecture Hall. Brothers, hurry up and grab a seat. Otherwise, there won't even be a place to stand." Jingtan was shocked. A large group of foreign guests? International Academic Lecture Hall? It didn't seem far from here. Jingtan turned a corner and headed towards the International Academic Lecture Hall. He was about to run over, but before he could accelerate, he saw a figure jump out from the grass. It ran in front of Jingtan and suddenly stopped. It moved sideways, raised its white glove-like paw, and waved it at Jingtan twice. Jingtan wasn't in the mood to play with it. He was still confused. Why was the sheriff here? Shouldn't he be taking a nap near the east area? The person that ran out was the sheriff. Not long after the sheriff ran out, Jingtan saw Huang and Depang. Jingtan turned his head and saw a chihuahua being led by its owner towards the school gate. The sheriff must have run over because he was tired of the chihuahua. Huang was just there to join in the fun. Depang was still following behind slowly. Its eyelids were half closed as if it was not interested in anything. Jingtan was thinking about the large group of foreign guests. He continued to run towards the International Academic Lecture Hall. Unsurprisingly, the other 3 cats were following behind him. There were quite a lot of people at the International Academic Lecture Hall. Fortunately, there were big trees on both sides of the road in front of the lecture hall. Jingtan climbed up a sycamore tree near the entrance of the lecture hall. He squatted on a branch and looked around. The large group of foreign guests didn't seem to be here yet. Seeing Jingtan squatting on the branch, the other 3 cats ran over one after another. The 4 cats squatted side by side. Jingtan turned his head and looked at the 3 cats beside him. He continued to look for the large group of foreign guests. There were indeed quite a lot of people outside the lecture hall. After the doors of the lecture hall opened, the people waiting were led in by the staff. The foreign guests arrived 5 minutes later. A few school leaders were there, and the principal personally accompanied them. It seemed that the foreign guests this time were very influential in the academic world. But, what about the large group of foreign guests? Where did the large group of foreign guests come from? Most of them were men in their 30s and above. Jingtan did not consider that this big wave was not as big as the big wave he was talking about. However, after a careful search, Jingtan found 2 good-looking women among the group of foreign guests. Only the 2 assistant blonde girls caught Jingtan's eye. Their perky breasts made one's imagination run wild. Jingtan was looking at the big-breasted girl when a group of people walked towards the lecture hall. When they passed by the sycamore tree, a middle-aged professor stopped and asked his assistant to take a photo. This professor was also a cat lover. His family also raised cats on the other side of the ocean. He suddenly saw 4 cats here, and their expressions were quite similar to his own cats. Therefore, he wanted to take a photo. When the professor came under the tree, his assistant came over and took a photo. While taking a photo of the person, he also took a photo of the 4 cats squatting in a row on the tree. At the bottom of the tree, Jingtan and the rest were squatting on a branch that was 4 or 5 meters above the ground. In order to take a photo of the person and the cats, the assistant changed several angles and distances. The other people laughed at the side. They didn't disturb him and didn't go up to take a photo. Some people were not interested in the cats, and some people were embarrassed. Didn't they see the people around them laughing? However, no one would have expected that this photo, which included a person and 4 cats, would be enlarged in the future and left on the wall of Tsinghua University's exquisitely decorated academic report hall's celebrity profiles. Below the photo, the text introduced the professor in the photo who won the Nobel Prize in Physics. The background of the photo was the International Academic Lecture Hall of Tsinghua University. However, everyone who saw this enlarged photo would be attracted by the 4 cats squatting side by side on the branch. They would stop in front of the photo for a long time and discuss with their companions what the scene was like when the photo was taken. Why did the 4 cats squat there? Some people guessed that the 4 cats had predicted the future Nobel Prize in Physics winner and came over. Some people guessed that this was a deliberate arrangement by the university. They knew that the person liked cats, so they trained the 4 cats to squat there in advance. Chapter 39. After squatting in the tree for a while, Jingtan became impatient. Several people under the tree looked at the 4 of them as if they were rare animals. Huang and the sheriff would have gotten up and run away if it weren't for the fact that their other 2 friends were still squatting there. As for Depang, it still completely ignored those irrelevant people. After Jingtan was swung by Huang's tail again, he looked at it sideways. Huang meowed softly, indicating that it really didn't want to stay here now. Forget it, the big-breasted girl has seen it anyway. Let's go. However, when Jingtan was about to get up, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Looking over there, Lord Zheng was accompanying a foreigner to the International Academic Lecture Hall. He didn't go with the previous group of people. It seemed that the foreigner had gone to the School of Physics, and Lord Zheng had been accompanying him. The 2 should be familiar with each other. Jingtan wasn't interested in Lord Zheng and the foreigner, but the 2 frequently mentioned a name that caught Jingtan's attention. They always mentioned Mary, and when Jingtan accompanied Little Joie by the artificial lake, one of Little Joie's original materials was written, "For my dear Mary." There were also some blessings at the back. In addition to the original materials, there were a few books that also had the name Mary, and Little Joie would usually annotate the books directly. In other words, these books should belong to Little Joie. Therefore, Mary should be Little Joie's English name. With that thought in mind, Jingtan put down the foot that he had just lifted. Huang, who was next to Jingtan, was more alert when he saw him. He was ready to rush down the tree, but when he looked back, he found that Jingtan had squatted back down again. He lowered his ears and meowed again. This time, it was a little longer than before. Unfortunately, this time, Jingtan was busy eavesdropping and ignored it. Jingtan's ears perked up to listen to the conversation between Lord Zheng and the foreigner. Jingtan didn't understand a lot of the technical terms, but other than these, he still understood some things, such as Little Joie's matter. That foreigner was obviously interested in Little Joie, but he didn't know about Little Joie's current situation. Lord Zheng didn't look too good. What happened to Little Joie was an eternal pain in Lord Zheng's heart, but she couldn't say it out loud. This bearded foreigner obviously didn't know how to read people's expressions. Didn't he see how forced the smile on Lord Zheng's face was? Jingtan shook his head secretly. "My dear Mary is taking care of the baby at home. You can give up now, bearded foreigner." What made Jingtan curious was that Lord Zheng said that Xiao Zhuo was preparing to go abroad. He would probably go abroad next year and would not come back for at least 3 years. The bearded man asked some more questions about Xiao Zhuo, but was evaded by Lord Zheng. He did not say where he was going, or whether he was going to do a postdoctoral exchange. He only said that he would be away for a few years. It was because Jingtan was clear about Xiao Zhuo's current situation that he was even more confused. It was reasonable to say that Lord Zheng was not the kind of person who spoke casually. Just now, when he said that Xiao Zhuo would go abroad, his expression was very certain. Otherwise, the foreigner would not have believed him. With Little Joie's current situation, could he still go abroad for an exchange? To follow up on the cooperation project? What about her child? Unfortunately, until Lord Zheng and the foreigner walked into the lecture hall, Jingtan did not hear the information he wanted to know. The electronic screen outside the lecture hall showed the topic of the report that was about to start. Now, it was talking about some things related to the theory of quark particles. From time to time, there would be people rushing in from outside the lecture hall. As the report began, the outside of the lecture hall had become quiet. Zheng Tan stood up and stretched. He turned his head and looked over. Huang and the sheriff squinted their eyes as if they were asleep. Zheng Tan used his tail to shake them, then jumped down from the tree and walked towards the family area. The 3 cats behind him followed one after another. Walking into the courtyard of the East family compound, Zheng Tan saw an old man dragging some things towards Building B. Zheng Tan did not know this person, but when there were people downstairs, Zheng Tan rarely jumped up to swipe the access card to open the door. Therefore, Zheng Tan followed the old man leisurely not far behind. When the old man threw away the cigarette butt, he glanced at the black cat behind him and waved his hand. "Go away, whose cat is this? Go away, don't think about my fish." Zheng Tan was speechless. "Do you think I care?" Below the things the old man was dragging were 2 plastic buckets. There were a few small holes in the buckets, and the smell of fish came out. However, Zheng Tan did not want to do anything to the fish. He never ate raw fish, and other cats would have diarrhea if they ate some of the things he could eat. Zheng Tan ignored the old man and went downstairs to the entrance of Building B. He squatted down and watched the old man move towards him. The old man dragged the things and looked at the black cat squatting in front of the door. He hesitated for a moment, then walked up and pressed the electronic lock on the entrance. Soon, Jiao Ma's voice came from inside. "Ronghan, it's me," said the old man. "Hey, Dad, why are you here?" "I'll go down and pick you up." "You don't have to come down. Just stay at home and open the door," said the old man. With a click of the door, the old man dragged the things in, and Zheng Tan followed behind him. Even when the old man walked to the door, he did not ask Jiao Ma to help him. When the old man put down the plastic bucket, Zheng Tan went up to take a look. Looking through the hole, the 2 old turtles were indeed quite big. As for the eels in the other bucket, Zheng Tan only glanced at them and did not pay much attention to them because the old man was still staring at him as if he was a thief. After resting for a while and drinking a glass of water, the old man went downstairs to carry the grapefruits upstairs. The small luggage trailers were just left downstairs. Anyway, there was no need to worry about them being stolen. Zheng Tan looked at the grapefruits the old man took out. They were quite big, but he did not know how they tasted. "Why did you buy so many apples and oranges?" the old man asked as he looked at the 4 boxes in the living room. Zheng Tan was also puzzled. He did not see them this morning, but now there were 4 more boxes. 2 boxes of apples and 2 boxes of oranges. Moreover, they were the 2 types of oranges that were very expensive in the supermarket. "A student gave them to us. We helped her last time. This time, her company bought fruits for the employees and gave us 4 boxes." After Jiao Ma said this, Zheng Tan knew who had sent them. What Zheng Tan did not know was that Zhao Lu sometimes went to the Institute of Biological Sciences to ask Associate Professor Jiao about Zheng Tan's situation. He knew that this guy did not eat cat food and only ate with him. Therefore, he did not send any cat food and changed the gift to fruits this time. Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma thought that the Zhao family was afraid that people would harshly mistreat the black cat. Old Man Goose sat on the sofa and chatted with Jiao Ma for a while. The topic was mainly about Gu Yuzi. Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and listened to them. Even when the old man glared at him, he did not move. In the past, Zheng Tan did not know much about Gu Yuzi's background. He only knew that Gu Yuzi was the child of Jiao Ma's younger sister. Her parents divorced and her mother stayed abroad. From the conversation between Old Man Gu and Jiao Ma, Zheng Tan knew why Gu Yuzi had always been so quiet. Gu Yuzi, or Little Pomelo, in Old Man Gu's words, had been living abroad with her mother. Gu Yuzi's parents were very capable people, but they often quarreled. It was not until this year that they confirmed their divorce. Little Pomelo followed her mother and even changed her surname when she came back to China. Her mother handed her over to Jiao Ma. Every month or half a year, she would transfer her living expenses to the bank card she left behind as little Pomelo's living expenses. When she first came over, little Pomelo had some communication difficulties. After all, she had stayed abroad for a long time and was not used to suddenly coming back. Moreover, she was a person of few words, so she was even quieter. However, after a few months of adaptation, little Pomelo was not as gloomy as before. Zheng Tan felt that he was in the same boat as little Pomelo. They both had irresponsible parents. One was materialistic and the other was self-centered. They were both young and capable, but cruel and unscrupulous. Zheng Tan had seen many such people. In the next 10 years, such people would grow along with the economic development of China in a J shape. Because he had changed his surname, Old Man Gu directly asked little Pomelo to call him Grandpa. Old Man Gu only had 2 daughters, and no one called him Grandpa. Now that he had Gu Yuzi, Old Man Gu was quite fond of this granddaughter. When the 2 children returned home in the afternoon, Old Man Gu had already peeled a grapefruit and passed it to the 2 children. Then, he casually put the grapefruit skin over Zheng Tan's head. Zheng Tan. F***CK. Old Man Gu carried little Pomelo. You've put on some weight. Our little Pomelo has grown taller. Little Pomelo revealed a rare smile and called out, Grandpa. After eating the grapefruit, dinner was not ready yet, so the 2 children went to do their homework. Go ahead. Grandpa will make eels for you later. Zheng Tan did not want to stay on the sofa and stare at the old man, so he followed little Pomelo into the room. Little Pomelo was in a good mood today because of Old Man Gu's visit, so she was more talkative. She softly complained to Zheng Tan about today's art class. Usually, she would talk to Zheng Tan when there was no one around. Many people were less wary of animals. Some people felt that talking to animals was the same as talking to oneself, but that was not the case. The speaker would feel differently. The teacher told me to draw familiar food or things that I often see in my life. I did, but little Pomelo opened her sketchbook and placed it in front of Zheng Tan. She was a little disheartened. Zheng Tan looked at the sketchbook that little Pomelo took out. It contained the results of today's drawing. Little Pomelo's drawing was not bad. The teacher gave a score of 92 on the spot. In Zheng Tan's opinion, it was already high enough. Back then, his drawing was like a handicap, hovering around 70 to 80. That was the result of the teacher's kindness. However, the focus of little Pomelo's sketchbook was not on the front, but on the teacher's comments. Although not many second graders were literate, the teachers would still write some simple comments when leaving the results. However, the handwriting was not as casual as the middle school teachers. It was much neater, and they would also annotate the complicated words with pinyin. This was also a process for the students to learn how to read. On the left side of the page that little Pomelo drew today, there was a red watercolor pen that gave the results and comments. Under the score 92 was written, soybeans and edamame are not bad. Keep up the good work. There was also a childish smiley face stamp at the end. Soybeans and edamame, your sister. Zheng Tan looked sympathetically at little Pomelo, who was frowning. The teacher's comments were too self-righteous. There was no other reason. The drawing that little Pomelo had drawn was actually the cover of a biology magazine that had been placed on the coffee table in the living room recently. The 2 organisms on the cover were actually Staphylococcus aureus and Paramecium. Chapter 40. After Old Master Gu returned to his hometown, he sent people to deliver things to him every few days. Because the 4 members of the Jiao family were not going back to their hometown for the new year, the elders of both families were worried about them. Once they found out that they were from the same hometown, they would send people to bring New Year goods over. In his hometown, preparations for the new year had started early. This year, many people went to the provincial capital to sell things to regular customers, such as fruits and meat products. Therefore, at the end of December, people would call the Jiaopa every few days to get things. The aquaculture industry in his hometown was very developed. Many people contracted fish ponds, and there were all kinds of fish. The Gu family raised eels, so it was safer to eat their own food. But that had nothing to do with Xingtan. Ever since Celestine moved to the company, Xingtan went to Xiaoguo's place, which was the furthest away from the school. There was nowhere else he could go. During the day, he couldn't run around outside the school. Outside the school was not as simple as inside. On campus, Xingtan could go to many places to relax. Some of the university students who saw Xingtan were mostly kind to him. After all, compared to those who had been in society for many years, students were more innocent. But after leaving the school, many people looked at Xingtan as if he were a dish. If he was still a human, Xingtan wouldn't have noticed anything. But from the perspective of a cat, Xingtan could feel what those people were trying to say. Cats who often wandered the streets were very sensitive to people's movements. After walking around for a while, Xingtan's feeling became stronger and stronger. Therefore, Xingtan always went for walks outside the school at night. There weren't many people at night, so he didn't have to be startled all the time. Most of the working-class people who entered society went home in a hurry at night, so they didn't care too much if they saw a cat. But at the end of the year, many people caught stray cats for walks, set traps, and then sold them to restaurants. Some people directly shipped them to other provinces to avoid trouble. This was what cats should pay attention to the most. Xingtan had never met a cat trafficker, but he still met a lot of obstacles. As a cat, Xingtan still felt a lot of pressure. He had underestimated the mentality and persistence of male cats to fight for territory. Those restless cats would fill a pile of feces, piss, or fight with each other. Xingtan tried to walk further away by himself, but in the end, he came back disappointed. Although Xingtan wasn't so bad that he couldn't beat those cats, and those cats weren't so ignorant, there were always two exceptions. One night, when Xingtan was walking towards Xiaoguo's pet center, he met a black cat just like himself. However, that black cat was always surrounded by other cats. Xingtan thought that they should be its underlings. To put it elegantly, they were called direct descendants. To put it simply, they were called followers. However, Xingtan had never lost a single fight. What annoyed Xingtan the most was that this black cat did not learn its lesson. After being beaten down once, it would jump out aggressively the second time. As the saying goes, it was indomitable, and the more it fought, the braver it became. Xingtan thought that this guy was purely stupid, and looking for trouble. Originally, Xingtan thought that this kind of fight was necessary for a cat, and that he had to fight wherever he went. However, one day, Xingtan found an exception. Christmas was coming, and some of the international students in the school were busy preparing for it. Xiaoguo thought about a cat food commercial about Christmas, letting Xingtan play Santa Claus, and letting the golden retriever, Lord, play the elk. When Xingtan was taken to the studio by Xiaoguo, he saw Lord squatting next to him. There was a pair of plastic antlers on its head, and it was squatting there with its mouth open, panting. It had probably been practicing some of the movements needed in the commercial, and it was only now taking a break. The few cats in Xingtan and Xiaoguo's shop had all worked with this golden retriever before. Although there was no so-called tacit understanding, it was not to the extent of discord. The few pets got along well with each other. In Xiaoguo's shop, except for Prince, the few cats had all been sterilized. Although Prince was also a male cat, because it was used to indoor confinement, it was much less aggressive than the cats that Xingtan saw on the streets. Moreover, there were so many cats in Xiaoguo's shop that they were used to the existence of cats other than themselves, and rarely fought to occupy a certain area. They had already filmed many commercials, and the staff here were all old acquaintances. They all knew that as long as they trained the other roles in the commercial well, it would be fine. As for the black cat, it was an expert, that was, hired with a high salary, and did not need any guidance at all. Therefore, there was a situation where Lord was so tired that it was panting, and Xingtan was squatting on the side and taking a nap. Finally, when Lord was able to complete a series of movements, Xiaoguo woke Xingtan up and started filming. Putting on the silly Christmas cat costume, Xingtan felt that his IQ was about to be pulled down. It was uncomfortable to wear it. Although it was not too tight, it always felt uncomfortable. Not only that, but Xiao Guo also took a big beard and put it on for Jingtan. When he put on the hat, it was as silly as it could be. People who saw this commercial would probably complain, Santa Claus is a black cat, black. Forget it, for the sake of the commercial, I'll endure it. I'm also dedicating myself to art. Jingtan found comfort in his heart. The task of the Christmas cat was to drive the golden retriever sleigh and deliver gifts from the, obviously, pet center to the cats and puppies. There were cat food, dog food, pet clothes, pet nests, and so on. After the bumpy shooting, Jingtan kicked off his clothes as soon as he walked out of the set, got rid of the big beard, and squatted on the high cat tree, waiting for Xiao Guo to send him home after he was done. The post-production work was done by Xiao Guo and Yan Zi. Yan Zi was now a permanent customer of the pet center. Seeing that Yan Zi's computer skills were good, Xiao Guo often asked Yan Zi to help. Of course, the help was not for free. Yan Zi stayed here for free, ate and drank for free, and fed the cats for free. Over there, a group of staff was sorting out the post-production work. The side where Jingtan was squatting was much more deserted. He had taken a nap before, but now he couldn't sleep. He was bored and looked around. Finally, Jingtan's eyes fell on Li Yuanba and his mother. Li Yuanba was still the same. The few cats in the store always stayed far away from it. When a few curious cats approached it, it would be forced to retreat by a glance. It didn't even need to raise its paws. A glance was enough to deal with them. This was something that Jingtan admired. The cat without a mole next to Li Yuanba was its son, Peanut Candy. Xiao Guo called him Peanut for short. When Jingtan saw the photo for the first time, he didn't look carefully, so he didn't see that a mole next to Peanut Candy's mouth. Peanut Candy's mouth was basically covered with white fur, but the yellow spot next to his mouth was particularly eye-catching in the surrounding white. It looked very funny. Jingtan thought that in a few months, this mole, the size of a mung bean, would probably grow to the size of a soybean. As for whether this mole would grow to the size of a quail egg by the time Peanut Candy grew to adulthood, that was unknown. However, Jingtan was looking forward to it and was happy to see it. Peanut Candy's fur was longer than that of other short-haired kittens, but it was different from those long-haired kittens. Zhang Zian guessed that its father was a long-haired kitten or a skewer kitten. Another thing that Jingtan found strange was the serious expression on Peanut Candy's face. For Huang, the word serious was just a facade, but Peanut Candy's serious expression was really serious. It had deeply inherited the expression of Li Yuanba. However, Peanut Candy was still young, and his eyes were still ignorant. He didn't have the aura of his mother. After squatting on the side for a while, Li Yuanba walked into the house with Peanut Candy in its mouth. There was a room that belonged to a swallow, and there was an entrance under the door that was specially designed for cats. Jingtan could see the room from where he was. He saw Li Yuanba walk into the room with Peanut Candy in its mouth for a while, then walk out again. This time, it was alone. Then, it didn't walk towards the studio, but went to the other end of the corridor. Jingtan remembered that there was a back door there, but that door was only opened when moving goods or large props, and was usually closed. Why was Li Yuanba walking there? Since he had nothing to do, Jingtan jumped off the cat tree out of curiosity and followed it. Li Yuanba looked back at Jingtan, who was not far away, and didn't respond. It continued to walk to the back door. There were some goods piled up at the back door, but it was far from the door. There was a small window near the corner. The window was high and open, probably for ventilation. Many of the goods that were shipped in had a strong smell. The height of the small window was not within the range of the cats in the shop, so Xiao Guo was not afraid that the cats in the shop would run out of the small window. Li Yuanba walked toward the window. While Jingtan was puzzled, it suddenly sped up. It was not running toward the window, but toward the side wall. It jumped over it, and when it touched the side wall, it quickly changed its angle. With a kick of its hind legs, it jumped toward the small window with the help of the side wall. It landed accurately. What the F***ck? This skill is F***king awesome. Behind them, Jing Tan's jaw almost dropped. It was really impossible to guard against it. Xiao Guo would never have thought that a cat could escape from the small window by jumping. There were some empty boxes piled up outside the door, which formed a staircase for Li Yuanba to jump down safely. Soon, it disappeared from Jing Tan's sight. Jing Tan squatted there and hesitated, then tried to jump directly to the small window. His jumping ability was slightly stronger than the average cat's. After a few tries, Jing Tan gave up. It was so close. Jing Tan started to try the jumping method of Li Yuanba. The first time, he didn't control the angle and strength well, and directly hit the wall. Fortunately, Jing Tan could still control his body at that moment and landed safely, but his legs were a little numb. The second time, it was a little better than the first time. He didn't hit the wall, but hit the open glass window, making a bang sound. Jing Tan moved her legs and waited for the pain to subside a little before she tried for the third time. This time, she finally reached the edge of the window. She kicked her legs and used her claws to push herself up. Then, she poked her head out to look. What Jing Tan didn't expect was that not far away, Li Yuanba was squatting on an empty box and looking at him. Waiting for me? After seeing the black cat at the window, Li Yuanba turned around, jumped off the box, and walked out. Jing Tan quickly followed. Trapping a cat was harder than trapping a dog. Jing Tan now had a deep understanding. He didn't know where Li Yuanba learned about it, but it found a few gaps and went in. After a few turns, it left the pet center without being discovered by anyone. At first, Jing Tan was unfamiliar with the place he passed by, but gradually, the scenery became familiar. Jing Tan had been here before when he was walking from the school, and he met it here. Meow. Just as he was thinking, Jing Tan heard the voice that annoyed him to no end. F***ck, it was that stupid cat. Looking up at the sound, Jing Tan saw the black cat squatting on the short wall, and there were two cat brothers around it. Different from the previous encounters, Jing Tan felt that there was something wrong with the stupid cat today, and the two cats around it didn't come up to join in the fun. After observing, Jing Tan found that the three cats were staring in the direction of Li Yuanba, as if they were facing a great enemy. When the indomitable cat faced Li Yuanba, it would only make a few weak, woo-woo sounds, and then run away. It was completely different from when it faced Jing Tan, when it knew it was going to lose, but still rushed up to look for abuse. The other cats also ran away. Not only these three cats, but as he walked deeper into the alley, Jing Tan also saw a few cats. Two of them were quite large, and there was the smell of their enclosure around them. But Li Yuanba just looked straight ahead and fearlessly walked through their territory. When the cats saw it, they just made a few woo-woo sounds, and when Li Yuanba turned its head to look, they ran away, as if there was a big dog chasing behind them. Jing Tan was deeply moved by this situation. From this, it could be seen that as a cat, Jing Tan was still far from being a cat. Strength was one thing, but aura was also another. And Li Yuanba could be regarded as a strong woman among cats, a cat in the eyes of the minions. Her ferocious appearance, coupled with her domineering aura, could completely suppress this alley where stray cats and domestic cats were mixed together. The strong sense of territory of the cats seemed to have disappeared at this time. Jing Tan could see the fear in the eyes of the cats when they saw Li Yuanba. Jing Tan looked at the tortoiseshell cat in front of him that didn't change its pace. It was a kind of aura that was inadvertently revealed. It wasn't an act, and it wasn't something that could be imitated by anyone. Jing Tan still remembered that when Xiao Guo first saw Li Yuanba, besides opening the pet bag, he didn't get close to it. Xiao Guo understood pet cats, but on the other hand, it was also related to a kind of message that Li Yuanba itself silently transmitted. The language of cats wasn't lacking. Different tones, different lengths, and different ways of speaking could express different meanings. However, since leaving the pet center until now, Jing Tan hadn't heard this tortoiseshell cat speak. It was completely relying on a kind of silent aura and aura. For people who didn't understand, they might not be able to see this difference, but now Jingtan could clearly feel that the tortoiseshell cat in front of him was far different from other cats. Appearance was determined by nature, and aura was polished by worldly affairs and time. Jingtan didn't know what Li Yuanba had experienced, but if a seemingly ordinary cat could have such an aura and aura, its experience was definitely not simple. Chapter 41. Following Li Yuanba around outside, Jingtan learned a lot. This trip was very enlightening for him. He heard that Li Yuanba was a stray cat. Obviously, it had more experience surviving outside than other domestic cats. It could distinguish the good and evil elements of all kinds of people and animals in the environment very well. Even if it was walking on the sidewalk, it would still be calm. When it encountered people with malicious intentions, the way it dealt with them was different. For some people, if you threatened or intimidated them, they would stay away. For others, the more you threatened them, the more they would be motivated. This was the case for humans. As a cat, its status was even lower, and the situation it faced was even more severe. Therefore, many animals that wandered the streets would run away when they saw people because they couldn't clearly distinguish who was kind and who was malicious. After being hurt a few times, it would form a kind of conditional discharge, and they would run away when they saw people. However, Li Yuanba could choose the best way to deal with it in a short time. For example, when passing by a milk tea shop, there was a couple sitting on the chair next to it. The man called out a few times, holding a string in his hand and swinging it to attract the cat's attention. Cats were always more sensitive to the sound me, and preferred the kind of string that moved. But he didn't expect Li Yuanba to walk away from him. Jingtan was very curious because before that, there were also people who called Li Yuanba like that. Although Li Yuanba didn't go over, it didn't change its route. But this time, after it pulled its ears, it walked away directly. It was very straightforward. Jingtan followed it and changed his route. Not far away, Jingtan heard the man sitting next to the milk tea shop holding the milk tea call out again, so he looked back. There was a cat passing by, standing on the flower bed. It looked like a domestic cat, with clean and soft fur. Hearing the man's call and seeing the swinging string, the cat moved closer. The next moment, the man sprayed the milk tea with the straw in his hand. The cat dodged quickly, and only some of its fur was stained by the milk tea. Therefore, the cat was unhappy. It lowered its ears, puffed up its fur, and growled. If Xiao Guo were here, he would definitely know that this was a warning from the cat, and that it could attack or run away at any time. Generally, it was best not to provoke it under such circumstances. In the end, the cat's reaction made the man even more excited. The cat was sprayed with milk tea and ran into the greenery, leaving only the laughter of the couple behind. Trash. That laughter was too ear-piercing. Jingtan tugged at his ears. Looking at those two faces, he couldn't help but want to scratch them. Jingtan looked at Li Yuanba. It had already walked far away, as if it did not know what had just happened. It was nonsense for a cat to lend a helping hand in the face of injustice. No one was a superhero, not to mention a cat that was just trying to survive. A cat's life was worthless. Jingtan retracted his gaze and quickly followed Li Yuanba. At the corner of the street, they met another couple. Similarly, the man also made a meat sound and made some movements to attract the cat's attention. Seeing that the cat in front of him ignored him, he threw a small stone at Li Yuanba. What made Jingtan different was that Li Yuanba had a completely different behavior from before. It lowered its ears, raised its whiskers, showed its fangs, and made a low growl. The man was obviously a little scared. His action of picking up the stone froze. At this time, his girlfriend next to him pulled his arm, as if she was afraid of being scratched. Therefore, they patted the dust off their hands and quickly left. For different people, different ways of dealing with them. It did not blindly retreat. When it should be strong, it was strong. When there was no need to be strong, it was also nimble to avoid conflict. This was the attitude that Li Yuanba adopted when walking on the street. It was different from the way of other cats. Jing Tan had been following it not far behind, so he could see everything that had happened before clearly. The couple in front and the couple in the back did show a difference in personality. Their momentary change in expression allowed Li Yuanba to choose the most suitable method. Those that could not do what Li Yuanba did could only be like other stray cats. They could only avoid people when they saw them outside. No matter how attractive the other party was, they could not go over, because they did not know if they would be sprayed with dirt or thrown stones in the next moment. They also did not know if their warning was effective on those people or if it would make them worse. It was not a golden pet in Beverly Hills. As an ordinary domestic animal living in the city, it could either be satisfied with the status quo or learn more survival skills. For a cat that could not stay indoors, survival was not easy. The lack of experience in a social environment was the biggest test for Jing Tan. Jing Tan was used to thinking from a human's point of view, but now, he was slowly changing. He did not know how long he would stay in this cat form. If he could never go back, in order to survive, he had to learn a lot. He had to learn how to look at problems from the point of view of an ordinary cat. Jing Tan did not want to give up his cat life so easily. After walking around with Li Yuanba, when he returned to the pet center, Xiao Gua and the others had just finished their work and were calling Jing Tan's cat name. Seeing Jing Tan coming from the back door, Xiao Gua did not suspect anything. He thought that Jing Tan was just curious and walked around there. When Xiao Gua put down his things and drank a cup of tea, they talked about today's commercial. After he left, the father and son continued their conversation. Jing Tan squatted on his special chair and listened to their conversation. The Jiao Pa was talking about the broken window effect. This topic started when Jiao Yuan came home and complained about some things in class. For example, copying homework. In the language class today, the teacher severely criticized a few students who copied homework. In Jiao Yuan's opinion, copying homework was also a problem in other classes. Why was the language teacher so serious? When the Jiao Pa heard Jiao Yuan's complaints, he pulled him over and started the lesson. The broken window effect meant that if someone broke a window in a building and didn't fix it in time, others might be implicitly encouraged to break more windows. The result was that in this kind of apathetic atmosphere, crime would breed. Behavior and environment are strongly suggestive and inductive. If the first broken window isn't fixed in time, something more serious might happen. Similarly, your classmates will think that copying homework is a useful and effective way to save time. They will continue to copy. Jing Tan looked at the Jiao Pa and then looked at the Jiao Yuan. He was conflicted. Why was he talking about such profound principles with a primary school student? In any case, Jing Tan had done everything from elementary school to university. He had copied homework, been late, gotten into fights, and blackmailed people. Other than a few words from his teacher, he had not been restrained. In the end, it was all problems that could be solved with money. Since money could solve the problem, why should he complicate it? Jing Tan still squatted there and listened to the Jiao Pa's lesson to the Jiao Yuan. The topic had already extended from the classroom phenomenon to business management. There are usually two types of environments for business development. One is the hard environment, such as office conditions, machinery, road facilities, etc. The other is the soft environment, such as the work atmosphere, corporate culture, interpersonal relationships, management style, etc. For example, your Uncle Yuan is now paying attention to these broken windows in the company. In the hard environment, the broken windows will be fixed as soon as there are problems. In the soft environment, the influence of the broken windows is even greater, so you can't let your guard down. Behind any major problem is the result of the accumulation of many other problems, so your Uncle Yuan is always paying attention. Once he discovers a problem, he will immediately take measures to deal with it because it may affect the company's reputation. And reputation is a curse that people put on your Uncle Yuan's company. No matter how capable you are, no matter how arrogant you are, if you want to develop well, you can't ignore these broken windows. Take your class for example. If the reputation is bad, you won't be able to talk about your classmates, right? Jiao Pa's last sentence made Jiao Yuan agree with him. There was a class in their grade that had a bad reputation. At first, when they heard that someone in that class had a pen eraser stolen, the class and the teacher didn't care much. Later, there were rumors of people stealing money and so on, so everyone was especially vigilant against the people in that class. The students in that class were too embarrassed to report to their class, afraid that they would be despised and ostracized. Let me give you another example. This kind of chain effect can be explained from another perspective. For example, if your mother bought you a new pair of socks with the Transformers pattern, you will definitely subconsciously choose the newer and cleaner shoes when you wear the new socks. If you wear the shoes, you will definitely pair them with a pair of trousers that are suitable for the shoes. After choosing the trousers, you will also have to match them with your jacket. After you wear them, you will definitely avoid getting dirty. So, after this process, your entire image will change. Oh, I understand. Take Xiong Xiong for example. His mother told him many times that a hunchback wouldn't grow tall because he likes hunchbacks, but he still doesn't listen. He usually hunches because he is already considered tall in the class, so he doesn't care. However, ever since he wore the new clothes that his mother carefully picked for him, he stopped hunching. He also pays attention to straightening his back. Because when his mother gave him the clothes, she said that the clothes look good with a straight back and attract girls. Jiao Yuan said. Zheng Tan. Is this encouraging puppy love? When Jiao Pa heard Jiao Yuan's words, he thought for 2 seconds and said, So, what you are saying is, when can I buy new clothes for the new year? You won't just give me a pair of socks, right? Zheng Tan. Listening to this father and son talk is so *king tiring. It was just a normal class phenomenon, but there were so many theories and hidden topics. The custom here was that the children would buy new clothes during the new year. As for the adults, it would depend on their family's conditions. Jiao Pa was not surprised by Jiao Yuan's answer. He said, what kind of clothes you can buy and how much you want will depend on your performance. Of course. If I get into the top 5 of the class, will you listen to me when it comes to clothes? Yes. Even if I buy clothes that are a little more avant-garde, a little less mainstream, and a little more domineering with rivets? Yes. If you want to spray mousse, I will also satisfy you. Okay. Jiao Yuan got the answer he wanted. He dragged his bag and went back to his room to do his homework. It was almost the end of the semester, and he had to give it a shot for his New Year's gift. After Jiao Yuan went back to his room, Jiao Ma came out with a plate of food. She looked at Jiao Yuan's closed door and said to Jiao Pa, Did that kid ask for something again? How can I not know what that kid is thinking? If he really gets into the top 5, will you let him wear that kind of clothes? It's okay. You just have to bring him to the toy gun store, and he will change his mind. If he can only choose between the toy and the clothes, he will definitely choose the former. Last year, he wanted that toy, but he got 6th place and couldn't buy it back. What if he doesn't get into the top 5? Jiao Ma asked again. He set the standard for getting into the top 5 himself. He has to be responsible for what he says. If he really can't pass the exam, buy him a toy gun. Don't buy the big one, buy the small one. We can't let this kid think that he can get what he wants even if he doesn't keep his word, Father Jiao said calmly. Chapter 42. Early in the morning, Jing Tan was sleeping soundly in little Pomelo's bed. Jiao Yuan ran over and knocked on the door to wake up the boy and the cat. The final exams for affiliated primary school affiliated to Renmin University of China were over. They just had to wait for the results. Jiao Yuan felt good about himself after the exams, so he was always in a state of excitement. He often discussed with his friends what kind of clothes to buy for the new year. In the 2 days after the exams, the 2 kids slept until they woke up naturally. Last night, they watched Sky Slam Dunk on the movie channel and went to bed at midnight. But now, it was only 7 o'clock. They used to wake up at 7 o'clock, but after the exams, they woke up after 9 o'clock. Especially Zhao Yuan, he slept until noon and woke up for lunch. Little brat. What's wrong with him today? After hearing Zhao Yuan's knocking and shouting, Jingtan covered his ears with his paws and continued to curl into a ball. The winter was too cold and Jingtan didn't want to get up. Since the two kids were on vacation, Jingtan would run and climb trees until the afternoon. In the morning, he would sleep in. Get up, it's snowing outside. It's all white. Get up and go play in the snow. Zhao Yuan was still shouting outside. Little Pomelo lifted the blanket and got up. When she got up, she didn't forget to cover Jingtan again. Jingtan yawned. It was boring to sleep alone. Forget it, get up. Jingtan grew up in a coastal city in the south. It basically didn't snow in the winter there. But when he was in middle school, he and a few of his friends drove to other provinces to see the snow without a license. No matter what, Jingtan didn't experience much snow. He hadn't seen snow since he came here. This was the first snow of the year. Jingtan got out of bed and shook his fur. He stretched and got out of bed. Zhao Yuan was already dressed. He was washing up in the bathroom with an excited expression on his face. When the phone rang, Zhao Yuan threw the towel that he hadn't wrung dry on the rack and rushed to answer the phone. He already knew who would call at this time. Zhao Yuan's laughter came from the bedroom. Jingtan thought it was his friends asking him to go out and play. After Jingtan peed, little Pomelo helped wipe his face and comb his fur. After eating the breakfast that Zhao Ma prepared, the two kids went downstairs. Jingtan followed behind them. It was really cold outside. When Jingtan went downstairs and turned the corner, she jumped a few times. Chu Xiangyang, who was about to go downstairs to take a picture of the snow, saw the black cat jumping around the corner of the stairs like a lunatic. He paused, greeted it, and hurried downstairs. The snow outside would be ruined if he was late. When Jingtan walked out of the building, Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo were on the basketball court next to the lawn in the family area. They were building a snowman. Zhao Yuan's body was still covered in snow. He probably threw snowballs at Xiong Xiong and the others. Xiao Hua was playing with the kids. He had thick fur, so he didn't feel cold even when rolling in the snow. He ran around with the kids in the courtyard, leaving dog footprints. As for Niu Zhuangzhuang, he was being led by his owner for a walk in the snow. He didn't have much freedom. From time to time, he would stop and lick the snow on the ground. Then he would bark at the basketball court in envy. However, his owner would persuade him to go away with 2 meat buns. Jingtan certainly wouldn't join the group of kids playing in the snow. He looked around. Depang was squatting by the balcony railing, looking outside. He didn't seem to want to come out. Huang came out and walked around. Then he shrunk to the corner. It was said that the habits of animals were related to the month they were born. For example, some dogs born in hot days liked to play in water, while some dogs born in cold days always avoided water. However, it seemed that this saying wasn't completely correct. Huang and the sheriff were born in the same month, but their habits were very different. Other than the fact that they were both neurotic at times, they were poles apart. Now, for example, Huang was hiding in the corner of the building to avoid the wind, while the sheriff was running around in the snow. A child in the yard took off his plush hat to play with Huang, and the sheriff was having fun. The only cat footprints on the snow were Huang's. After a while, Huang came out from the corner of the building and walked to the basketball court. There, Xiaohua was lying on the ground, panting. He stuck out his big tongue and breathed out clouds of white smoke. After Huang went over, it squatted beside Little Blossom. It was on the leeward side so that it could shelter from the wind and keep warm. After climbing a few trees, Jingtan's body warmed up a lot. He didn't feel too cold anymore. He was still a little sleepy. There was no sleeping atmosphere at home. After thinking about it, Jingtan decided to go to the Jiao Pa's office to continue sleeping. The Jiao Pa's office had air conditioning. The electricity was reimbursed. During summer and winter, all the offices and laboratories in the school would turn on the air conditioning. Some of them left it on all day and night. They would only tell the freshmen about saving electricity. Zheng Tan jumped onto the flower bed and walked along the edge of the flower bed to the reborn science building. The road had already been swept clean. The cars coming and going had already crushed the snow on the road. The school's greenery was done well. Even if the sycamore trees on both sides of the road had all lost their leaves, there were still camphor trees, pine trees and other plants that were green all year round. The snow was still falling. It wasn't as heavy as before, but it was still very wet when it landed on one's clothes. Not far away, a few students holding umbrellas walked over. They had also come out to take pictures. Maybe they were like Zheng Tan. It rarely snowed in their hometown, so they were curious. A girl pushed away the umbrella that a boy next to her passed to her. "I don't want an umbrella. I want to be soaked in the snow." "Ignore her. She's so embarrassing." Another girl scolded jokingly. "She's seeing snow for the first time. Let her be." "Hey, look, there's a black cat in the flower bed. Hurry up and take a picture," someone shouted. Zheng Tan pulled his ears, looked away, and ignored them. "I want to take a picture with this black cat." The girl who shouted that she wanted to be soaked in the snow ran over to Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan didn't hide. He gave her face and paws to let her make a silly peace sign. This girl was quite good-looking. "I want to take a picture with a cat too." A boy came over. Hearing the boy's words, Zheng Tan walked away without looking back. He only left cat footprints on the flower bed. After turning a corner, he could already see the science building. Zheng Tan, who was about to speed up, suddenly stopped. He heard someone say Jiao Pa's name. Looking sideways, he saw two people on the sidewalk walking towards the science building. They still smelled of spicy hot pot. He guessed that they had just come out of the snack bar on campus. "I'm not trying to discourage you, but if you don't get a high score, you'll probably be eliminated. In our department, the instructors like to recruit students from our school or those who have high scores. In addition, our school's students have priority at all times. For example, my score is about the same as yours. We both just passed the cutoff, but my chances of being accepted are much higher than yours. Of course, different instructors treat students differently. For example, Zhao Mingxing's requirements are very high. Many people applied for him in this year's postgraduate entrance exam. He didn't accept any of the previous candidates. I heard that his requirements are very strict. If your score is below the cutoff, you definitely won't be accepted." The student was still talking non-stop. Zheng Tan just remembered that tomorrow was the weekend. It was also the time of the national postgraduate entrance exam. Jiao Pa often stayed in the office these days. He had to mark the students' final exam papers, hold meetings about the postgraduate entrance exam, guide research projects, and pay attention to the company's situation. A few days ago, Zheng Tan heard from Jiao Pa that he wanted to recruit a satisfactory postgraduate student to share his work. Xian couldn't handle it alone. Jiao Mingxing. The other person was a little confused. He was from another school and was not familiar with the instructors of Tsinghua University's Faculty of Biological Sciences. He only knew a few big names in the faculty. "I knew you didn't know him. Jiao Mingxing is not famous in other schools, but this year, he became popular." A few students who didn't apply for his postgraduate entrance exam regretted it. "He's a new rising star." Zheng Tan pricked up his ears to listen to the gossip. Usually, he didn't hear about this kind of thing. So, Jiao Pa was a new rising star in the eyes of the students. However, Jiao Pa was famous for two reasons. One was the project fund, and the other was Xian. Among the postgraduate students in the same year, Xian was far ahead of the others. In the faculty, the most direct way to evaluate a student's excellence was to look at their SCI articles. Although some people criticized this evaluation method and attitude, it was indeed a recognized evaluation method. EXIN had already published 2 articles in half a year. The impact factor was not bad. In other people's eyes, this was mostly due to Associate Professor Jiao. If the project was not good, how could she produce results without the project and the funds? Some of the other famous instructors' spots are either full or have already been decided. You don't have to bother to compete. You can consider the marginalized instructors. Although they don't have many projects, at least you have a higher chance of being accepted. Okay, I have to go back and revise. Take a good look at the printed courseware. After chatting for a while, the two of them separated. The student from the faculty walked towards the direction of the dormitory, and the student from another faculty went to the past life research building. Then, he came out and walked towards a nearby shed. Zheng Tan followed the student from another faculty. Just now, he saw from the flower bed at the entrance that this person only stood in the hall on the first floor of the past life research building for a while. He looked at some of the honorable introductions hanging in the hall, such as the projects that the faculty had won, and so on. There was also a list of the winners of the annual academic meeting. Zheng Tan remembered Jiao Pa saying that EXIN had won the first prize, and that there was a 3,000 yuan bonus. When this person walked out of the building, Zheng Tan heard him mumbling something. He mentioned Jiao Pa and EXIN's names. Therefore, Zheng Tan was curious. Ever since Zheng Tan turned into a cat, his curiosity had increased a lot. However, Zheng Tan didn't think so. He just thought that it was purely because he was bored and wanted to have fun. There was a roof above the shed, so no snow would fall. The undergraduate students were on vacation. Recently, they were busy preparing for the courses that they hadn't finished yet. Some students who had finished all the courses had already bought train tickets to go home. Therefore, there were fewer bicycles in the shed, and the space was much more spacious. There was a wooden shelf next to the shed, and there was a wooden cable roller on the ground. Zheng Tan saw this person drag the roller to the shelf, pat the dust on it, and put the bag on his back on the shelf. He took something out of the bag, and then sat on the wooden cable roller. Zheng Tan was in the flower bed behind him. Due to the cover of some green plants, this person wouldn't notice him even if he turned around. The person who was sitting down spread out a thick printed document on his knees. Zheng Tan thought that this should be the printed courseware mentioned before. It's so damn thick. Can I finish reading it in one night? Zheng Tan didn't know much about the postgraduate entrance exam. Now, it seemed that it wasn't just about the exam. Skills? Who cares? Zheng Tan didn't bother about the so-called skills. He just came over to take a look out of curiosity. Anyway, he had nothing to do, but it didn't seem to be interesting. Just as he was about to leave, Zheng Tan saw the person sitting there take out a bag. The bag was filled with what looked like jerky. Beef jerky? What a big piece. Zheng Tan was curious and didn't pay attention to his feet. He stepped on a branch, making a cracking sound. Looking up, Zheng Tan saw the examinee from another school looking at him with a piece of beef jerky in his mouth. Zheng Tan didn't feel that this person showed any malice. This person even handed Zheng Tan a piece of beef jerky. Looking at the clean and unbitten piece of beef jerky, and then looking at the person in front of him, Zheng Tan shamelessly opened his mouth and took it. Then, he leaned to the side and began to focus on eating the beef jerky. Zheng Tan didn't like the food he was eating falling to the ground, so he squatted down, put the piece of beef jerky on his arm, and slowly chewed. Hey, you can really eat Inner Mongolian beef jerky. Before the examinee from another school could finish his sentence, he saw a familiar-looking person walking towards the car shed. He had just seen the introduction of the person walking over in the hall of the biology building. Teacher. Teacher Jiao. The examinee from another school hurriedly stood up. He was obviously a big guy, but now he didn't look imposing at all. He looked a little reserved. Associate Professor Jiao had originally planned to go to the administration building to do something, but as soon as he came out of the building, he casually glanced at the surrounding snowy scenery and saw the familiar figure of a cat. His cat was squatting there, happily chewing on the beef jerky. The person next to him was unfamiliar. This size was very conspicuous in the courtyard. If he had seen him before, Associate Professor Zhao thought that he would definitely remember him. You are? Oh, my name is Su Chu, Su as in threonine, Qian as in fun. I'll be here for the exam tomorrow. As soon as Su Chu said this, Associate Professor Zhao knew that this person must be a student from another university in the city, not his own school. Associate Professor Zhao didn't immediately leave. He also didn't eat the beef jerky that Su Chu handed over. He stayed there and chatted with Su Chu for a while. It was all about professional matters. Zheng Tan chewed on the jerky while listening to their conversation. At first, the content of the conversation between the two was somewhat familiar to Zheng Tan. After all, he had been following Zhao Pa for so long and listened to so many PowerPoint presentations. Even if he didn't understand the content, he was familiar with it. However, as time went on, Zheng Tan became more and more confused. The conversation between the two gradually became a simple and direct way of asking and answering questions. If each letter in this sentence represents an amino acid, what is it? Cheese, gu, C, ilyang, cysteine, C, tiandong. What is the principle behind transforming isolated B-type blood into O-type blood? The B-type antigen on the surface of the blood cell membrane, the reason for Dolly's premature aging? Here's what I think. First, the length of the telomeres in the cell. Light is an essential condition for the development of chloroplasts and the synthesis of chlorophyll. Without light, the leaves of many plants will turn yellow. However, the heart of the lotus seed also can't see sunlight. Why is it still green? The two of them were very straightforward with their questions and answers. Zheng Tan, who was lying next to them, was at a loss. At the same time, he was chewing the beef jerky in his mouth. When he finally finished chewing the beef jerky, Zhao Pa's conversation also ended. Exian came to the caravan 5 minutes ago. He originally wanted to push his cart back to the dormitory to sleep. However, he found that his boss was in the caravan and was talking to a stranger, so he came over to listen. The more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. Why were the questions at the end of the conversation similar to what a teacher taught a few days ago during the last class before the exam? One had to know that most of the questions in the last class before the exam would appear on the exam papers. These questions were the final secrets of the students. It was also an open secret of the university. It was just that many people outside of the university did not know about it. However, Zhao Pa had brought up some of the questions. Was he trying to leak the questions? After Su Chu left, Exian said to Associate Professor Zhao, "Boss, are you leaking the questions?" This is not leaking the questions. This is called answering the questions. Zheng Tan. Zhao Pa, you have lost your integrity. On the other hand, Su Chu, who had received guidance, was happily walking back to his rented apartment. He did not answer some of the questions, so he would go back and look through the information later. Since he was able to talk to Associate Professor Zhao for so long, did it mean that as long as he passed the exam, he would have a chance to be recorded by Associate Professor Zhao? Chapter 43. It was almost Chinese New Year, and the children were quite free. They were thinking about what to do all day. But for the adults, it was a busy day. The school was officially on holiday, and there were not many people in the school. 2 days ago, Exian left the school and went home. Zhao Pa and the other teachers held a summary meeting and did not go to the school. They took the test papers home and marked them. At the same time, they made Zhao Yuan do the hard work. Little Pomelo helped them from the side. There was one professional course and one elective course. But there were still a lot of papers from a few classes. Zhao Yuan helped to change the questions. He did not know the other professional knowledge, but he could still solve the multiple-choice questions ABCD, and so on. After tallying the papers, he wrote down the score on the blank space beside the paper. This way, Zhao Pa could calculate the total score after he marked the other questions. Jiao Pa asked little Pomelo to help him check the papers that Jiao Yuan marked. Little Pomelo was only in 2nd grade, but she was very familiar with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Jiao Pa even placed a calculator beside the paper. Little Pomelo could use it to check the papers. As for Jiao Yuan, he was almost in middle school. Why would he need to use a calculator to do basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division? Jiao Yuan could not afford to embarrass himself. The results of the affiliated school were out. Jiao Yuan ranked 4th in the class. Jiao Pa had never asked him to rank or score. It was all Jiao Yuan's own standards. Sometimes, he would meet the standards, and sometimes, he would fail. But this time, he got what he wanted. Things developed as Jiao Pa expected. When Jiao Ma led him to the shopping mall, they passed by a toy gun stall. Jiao Yuan stared at the toy guns. In the end, he chose the guns and gave up the choice of clothes. As for why Jiao Yuan sat here and helped mark the papers today, he mainly wanted to earn some pocket money. One paper cost 10 cents. There were about 200 to 300 papers in here. When they went out to play, they could buy some junk food. Zheng Tan squatted on the foldable table with the Chinese chess pattern on it and watched them mark the papers. The papers were filled with childish red numbers. Sometimes, Jiao Yuan would see people who were bored during exams and draw on the back of the papers. Then, he would sit there and laugh. "Hey, I know this teacher. Dad, isn't this the teacher who always likes to carry a loudspeaker? His drawings are real." Zheng Tan stretched his neck to take a look. On the back of the paper, there was a simple drawing of the invigilator with a ballpoint pen. Jiao Yuan added a few strokes. Little Pomelo wanted to see it, but Jiao Yuan blocked her view. He put the paper under the table and handed it to Jiao Pa after he finished marking it. This was because he added a stroke on the invigilator's crotch to draw a small penis. He also used a ballpoint pen of a similar color to avoid arousing suspicion. He did not use a red pen to mark the invigilator's crotch. Anyway, the final papers would not be given out unless the students who had doubts about the results requested to check the papers. Under normal circumstances, no one would see these drawings. Therefore, Jiao Yuan did not say anything about Jiao Pa's actions. Zheng Tan tugged at her ears. This little brat really had a bad taste. Not long after, Zheng Tan heard Jiao Yuan exclaim again. "Dad, this person said that he has never learned English. He wants you to be merciful." Jiao Yuan pointed to the multiple-choice questions on the test paper in his hand, which were all English nouns and explanations. Zheng Tan saw that the first question of the test paper was written in English, and there was a note in the blank space behind the explanation. "Dear Teacher Jiao, I am from the XX ethnic group. I have never learned English before, and I was tested in language R for the college entrance examination. If I don't answer well, please have mercy. According to Tsinghua University's requirements, those who failed a subject had to retake it. In the past, it was a make-up exam. Later, the university discovered that some people were trying their luck. If they failed the exam, they could just take a make-up exam. Anyway, the make-up exam would usually be missed. Therefore, the university cared less and less. In the end, the university came up with a new policy this year. Those who failed a subject had to retake it. At first, many people protested. When Zheng Tan went out for a jog in the morning, he saw some notes on the walls and tree trunks. They were anonymous people's protests. Because the other universities in Tsinghua City were not so harsh, the students condemned the university for being too inhumane. However, in the end, they gave in. Some people felt that it was embarrassing to have to go to class with juniors who were 1 year younger than them after failing a subject. However, some people were more optimistic because they could get to know more beautiful juniors. After hearing Jiao Yuan's words, Jiao Pa looked at the name on the paper and said, "I know about this person's situation. The other teachers also know about it. When the time comes, they will definitely loosen the standards for him. Sigh, there's such a good thing. When I take the Chinese exam, I will write at the end of my essay, "Teacher, my hand is injured. My handwriting is not good while I am taking the exam. Please be merciful. Maybe the grading teacher will be soft-hearted and give me high marks." Zhao Yuan's essay scores were his pain. The essay scores were the ones that dragged down his Chinese results. Because his handwriting was not good with a fountain pen, his handwriting would always drag down his scores. Sometimes, a difference of 1 or 2 marks would cause his ranking to drop by a few places. If his ranking fell behind, his family would not be able to fulfill his wishes. Therefore, Zhao Yuan had a deep resentment towards his essay scores. However, although Zhao Yuan's handwriting was not good with a fountain pen, his calligraphy was the complete opposite. When Zhao Yuan participated in the primary school students' calligraphy competition, his form teacher could not believe his handwriting. Every word written with a fountain pen looked like they were malnourished. How could a brush be written like this? Even some secondary school students might not be able to match up to his calligraphy. In the words of his form teacher, Zhao Yuan's calligraphy had some strength of character. Later on, his form teacher lamented, "Zhao Yuan, when will your fountain pen have some strength of character? Don't always be malnourished." Zheng Tan had seen Zhao Yuan's fountain pen handwriting before. There was a piece of calligraphy hanging on the wall of Zhao Yuan's room. There were also some notes written with fountain pen in the room. The contrast was too strong. If he did not know the truth, Zheng Tan would never believe that these were written by the same person. Zhao Yuan looked at the test paper in his hand and twirled his pen. He started to think of a plan. The final exam was cross-marking. His own teacher would mark another class's test paper, and the teacher marking his own test paper would not be able to recognize his handwriting. Zhao Yuan nodded. Yes, this plan could work. Get rid of that little trick in your head. If you do this during the primary school exams, it will backfire. Do you think those teachers are fools? Zhao Pa did not even look at them. When he heard Zhao Yuan twirling his pen, he knew that this kid was starting to think dirty again. Oh. Zhao Yuan sighed and continued to mark the rest of the test paper. Do, the phone in the bedroom rang. Zhao Pa looked at the caller ID and the expression on his face became a lot calmer. Hello, Zheng Tan's hearing was much better than the 2 children's. The bedroom was not that big, and it was not that far away, so he could hear the conversation on the phone. It was a female voice. Most of the time, it was just the female talking. Occasionally, she would say a few words in English. Zhao Pa stood there with the phone in his hand and simply responded. He did not say much. Although Zhao Pa did not talk much, according to Zheng Tan's understanding, Zhao Pa was not usually so cold when talking on the phone. The other party mentioned her a few times, but Zheng Tan did not know who this her was referring to. The most the other party said was that she would send money and hoped that Zhao Pa could take care of her. After talking for a few minutes, Zhao Pa finally stopped saying oh, and okay. Instead, he asked, "Do you want to talk to her?" The other party was silent for a while and said, "Okay, I have something to do here. I'm afraid I can't talk for more than a few minutes." Zhao Pa did not listen to the other party's whispers. He turned to look at little Pomelo, who was working on the calculator, and said, "Pomelo, your mother wants to talk to you." Zheng Tan's ears perked up. Little Pomelo's mother? The mother who was overseas and did not want to come back at all. She sent her 7-year-old daughter back to the country so that she could enjoy herself outside? Zheng Tan did not think of Pomelo's mother at that moment. It was mainly because the words and the tone of the person who spoke were too distant. It was as if she was trying to evade something and was afraid that Zhao Pa's people would stick to her. No wonder Zhao Pa had such a reaction. If Zheng Tan had been there, he would have started scolding. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan could not speak. He could only howl like a cat. Zhao Yuan did not continue marking the papers. He looked at little Pomelo with a sympathetic gaze. Little Pomelo spoke even less than Zhao Pa on the phone. She only said oh, and then that was it. The other party had hung up. Zheng Tan could not help but scratch his feet with his paw. Pomelo's mother only said 2 sentences. One was to ask little Pomelo, "Are you okay?" The other was to remind her, "Be good at Auntie's house." Little Pomelo pursed her lips and hung up the phone. She walked over and continued to work on the calculator to check the papers. After she was done, she made a tick on the papers to show that there was no mistake. The papers still had scratches left by Jingtan's cat paw. "All right, that's all for today." Jiao Pa clapped his hands and sorted the papers from Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo. "Oh yeah, Pomelo, your mother sent some money over to buy you a New Year's gift. What do you want to buy?" Little Pomelo thought for a while and answered, "A bicycle." "Me too." Jiao Yuan was excited. How could he forget about the bicycle? He would have to ride a bicycle after he entered junior high. He should have practiced in advance so that he could go racing with Xiong Xiong and the others. There were not many motorized vehicles in the school anyway. It was suitable for racing. Jiao Pa looked at Jiao Yuan. His expression did not change. "Rejected." "Why?" "Your mother said that she would buy it during the summer break. Xiong Xiong, Suan, and the others are the same. They will not buy a bicycle in advance." The mothers had already discussed the matter of buying a bicycle. They had unanimously decided not to buy one for the time being. There was still half a year to go. If they bought one now, the children would go crazy again. They would buy it during the summer break. When the time came, they would go together. They had already chosen a shop. It was an acquaintance of Xiong Xiong's mother. They could get a discount together and it would be easier to solve the problem of the bicycle. Jiao Yuan felt better when he heard that the others would be treated the same. For children of little Pomelo's age, they would definitely not buy a bicycle like Jiao Yuan and the others. She would buy a children's car. The place where they bought the bicycle was near the central department store. The 3 of them walked there in the afternoon. Zheng Tan did not follow them. It was almost the new year and there were many people there. It was inconvenient for Zheng Tan to follow them, so he decided to sleep at home. Or he squatted in the kitchen and watched Jiao Ma prepare some New Year's food, such as fried rice balls, fried lotus root, and braised food. When Zheng Tan was squatting there, Jiao Ma would occasionally pass him a freshly fried meatball. Zheng Tan chewed the meatball in his mouth. He felt that his days were so good. This was the so-called life where he could just open his mouth and sleep when he was full. He did not have to worry about anything. The 3 of them left quickly and returned quickly. When they returned, Jiao Pa was carrying a pink and purple children's car that had been assembled. Choosing a children's car was not easy. Don't think that it would be safe just because there were 2 protective wheels on the back wheels. It also depended on the size of the handbrake on the car. If the handbrake was too big, the child would not be able to hold the handbrake tightly and would not be able to stop the car. It also depended on whether the braking force was too strong and whether the chain cover was well covered. Only then could the child's chances of injury be reduced. Therefore, Jiao Pa asked little Pomelo to choose the car and test it herself. After testing the car, little Pomelo requested to change it to a bigger basket. The original basket was too small. Although the big basket did not look as good as the original, little Pomelo liked it. Jiao Pa and Jiao Yuan could also guess the reason for such a big basket, so they did not object. "Yo, this car is quite beautiful." Jiao Ma came out of the kitchen wearing an apron. When she saw the basket, she smiled and said, "Is this specially prepared for black charcoal?" "Yes." Little Pomelo nodded and then looked at Jing Tan. Jing Tan wagged his tail and walked over to the basket and jumped on it. Because it was a children's car, it was not as high as Jiao Pa's electric car. Jing Tan felt that it was quite close to the ground. Fortunately, the space in the basket was not bad, and it was not uncomfortable to squat inside. It would be best if he could put a plush cushion inside. As Jing Tan was thinking, little Pomelo took out a plush hat and said, "It will be better if you put this on." The wheels were covered with dust. Jiao Pa and Jiao Yuan came back with little Pomelo, who was riding for the first time. With the protection wheels, the balance was stable. She could be cooked after a few petals. Looking at little Pomelo riding, Zhao Yuan was so envious that he wanted to drag one of the parked bicycles to practice. However, no matter how he thought about it, he did not want to ride little Pomelo's children's car. If a man rode this kind of car, it would be a joke. After getting a car, little Pomelo would ride a few laps downstairs every day. Zheng Tan would squat in the basket, and with the plush hat, he did not feel cold. Once, Huang saw Zheng Tan squatting in the basket and jumped up, but he was slapped down by Zheng Tan. Outside cats were not allowed to enter private cat territory. There were not many children in the courtyard who had their own bicycles. When they saw little Pomelo riding, they were all envious. They asked their families to buy one for them, and if their families did not buy one, they would come over to borrow little Pomelo's bicycle. In the end, they were scared away by Zheng Tan. Therefore, within 2 days, all the children in the courtyard knew that there was always a fierce black cat on Gu Yuzi's basket. It was said that it would scratch children. Gradually, even without Zhao Yuan's intervention, no one dared to touch little Pomelo's bicycle. In the beginning, little Pomelo only rode her bicycle in the courtyard. Later, she began to ride her bicycle outside the courtyard. She did not want to attract hatred in the courtyard. There were too many people who were jealous of her. The Jiao Pa followed behind her and watched. The temperature had risen in the past 2 days, and the snow had almost melted. There was no need to worry that the road would be icy and slippery. After a few times, the Jiao Pa was relieved. Although little Pomelo was young, she was very sensible. A sensible child would be doted on, and adults would be more tolerant of anything. Everyone in the family could see that little Pomelo was not in a good mood recently. It was probably because of her mother's phone call. Therefore, no one said anything when little Pomelo rode her bicycle outside the courtyard every day. Today, little Pomelo rode her bicycle outside the courtyard after lunch as usual. Her children's bicycle was locked next to the Jiao Pa's electric bicycle. She did not want to tire herself out by carrying it up and down every day. Moreover, there was not much space in the house, so it was inconvenient to leave it at home. The Jiao Pa did not ride his electric bicycle. He followed behind and watched. Little Pomelo rode her bicycle slowly. The Jiao Pa could catch up with her in a few steps. Not long after, the Jiao Pa's phone rang. Yuanzi was looking for him and asked him to go to the company. The Jiao Pa reminded little Pomelo not to ride too far and to go home after a while. The Jiao Pa left after getting the assurance. Without the Jiao Pa behind her, little Pomelo rode a little faster. They followed the main road straight ahead. Zheng Tan looked at the road. This was the road he usually ran on. If he went straight ahead, he would reach the forest at the edge of the school. Little Pomelo's destination was the forest. She had been there once with the Zhao Yuan, so she remembered it. The forest was not quiet. The various sounds from the construction site not far away could be heard. Recently, the construction site had been working day and night. The workers were anxious to go home for the new year and finish their work as soon as possible. Little Pomelo rode towards the forest for a while. She did not want to go deeper. The adults had said many times that this area was not safe. Although it was daytime, little Pomelo did not want to go in and take a look. Therefore, she turned around and prepared to go home. Just as she was about to turn, a child's cry came from the forest. There was also the sound of a dog barking. Zheng Tan could tell who the dog was. The guard dog at the side door was a German shepherd. It was brought here not long ago and was 4 months old. It usually came to the forest to play and fought with Zheng Tan. However, after it became familiar with Zheng Tan, it did not cause too much trouble when it saw Zheng Tan. Sometimes, it would run around the forest with Zheng Tan. As long as its owner whistled, it would quickly run back. However, what happened at this time? Did it scare the child? Little Pomelo hesitated for a moment. She parked the car and locked it. She took out the rolling pin from her small backpack. This was the toy that the Zhao Yuan had discarded after getting the toy gun. When little Pomelo was about to ride out, the Jiao Yuan stuffed it into her backpack. Otherwise, the first reaction of the children would have turned around and run when they saw the dog barking at them. The two little girls didn't look much older than little Pomelo. One of them was sitting on the ground with neat bangs and dressed like a furball. When she saw little Pomelo, it was as if she saw her mother. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she reached out for help and comfort. The other girl in a pink cotton-padded jacket was next to Furball. She didn't look like she was injured. She was waving a branch at the blackback not far away, trying to drive it away. When the girl in the pink cotton-padded jacket saw little Pomelo, she said, "Is your family's adult around?" Quickly asked the adult to come and help drive this dog away. Little Pomelo shook her head. There were no adults around. Seeing little Pomelo shake her head, the two girls suddenly became depressed. There were no adults around. How could they drive the dog away? Furball. The girl covered her injured finger and trembled as she looked at the dog a few steps away. Although the dog was still underage and wasn't considered a big dog, it was bigger than the Chihuahua and Corgi in their yard. Looking at the sharp teeth in its mouth, it must be very painful to be bitten. When the blackback noticed little Pomelo and Jingtan coming over, it only glanced at them and then continued to bark at the two children. The barking became more and more urgent, but none of the children here knew what it was trying to say. Jingtan looked around and then looked at the blackback. He noticed that the blackback glanced at the furball girl from time to time. It didn't focus its attention on the girl in the pink cotton-padded jacket who was waving the branch. However, the threatening action of waving the branch really made it unhappy, so when it gradually became impatient, it became more impatient. If it were Niu Zhuangzhuang, would you dare to wave the branch at him? You would have rushed up and bitten him. Jingtan walked over slowly and came to the side of the furball girl. Little Pomelo wanted to stop him. In her mind, most cats and dogs could not get along well. The few in the yard were an exception. After all, they had known each other since they were young. There was not much hostility between cats and dogs. However, the dogs outside the yard were different. Seeing that her own black cat's actions did not cause the dog to rush over, little Pomelo was relieved. At the same time, she also moved over, holding the rolling pin in her hand. Jingtan circled around the furball girl. As she circled around, she also paid attention to the gaze of the German shepherd. Finally, Jingtan turned sideways and squeezed the furball child. "What is your cat doing? Tell your cat to go away. These are the new clothes that my uncle bought for me. It's very expensive." The furball girl looked at little Pomelo. "It wants you to move. You want me to move? Don't you know I sprained my foot? It hurts so much." Little Pomelo was about to say something, but Jingtan had already found the source of the disaster. Pushing aside the corner of the furry jacket, Jingtan saw a yellow plastic frisbee. The frisbee had the bite marks and smell of the blackback. "This is it." Jingtan pulled the frisbee out. After seeing Jingtan's actions, the blackback wanted to rush over. However, the pink jacket knocked it back with a branch, causing it to bark even more fiercely. "You're squashing something," little Pomelo reminded. The furball girl looked around suspiciously, then tried to move a little. At this time, Jingtan had already pulled the frisbee out. He raised his paw and the frisbee flew out. Seeing the frisbee, the blackback didn't care about the three people here. Before Jingtan could hit the frisbee, it started wagging its tail. When the frisbee flew, it ran away happily. When the frisbee was about to hit the ground, it jumped up and caught it. Then, with the frisbee in its mouth, it walked towards the construction site. The owner of the blackback should be walking around the construction site. The construction site was more noisy. No wonder the owner didn't hear the roars here. Otherwise, he would have started whistling. Seeing the dog run away, the three children let out a long sigh of relief. The pink jacket didn't care about the dead leaves and mud on the ground and directly sat down. The alarm was lifted and the source of the disaster was found. The two children talked a lot more. The furball girl even apologized to little Pomelo. She was quite sincere. She was a good child who knew her mistakes and could change. This child's temperament was not bad. Zheng Tan climbed up a nearby tree. He didn't stay with the three children. Because the pink jacket kept wanting to touch him, Zheng Tan turned and ran. He didn't let her touch him. "Little girl, your hands are still sticky with mud." The furball girl was talking about their previous experience. Today, the adults had gone shopping to prepare for the new year. The two of them were bored at home, so they came out to play. They were classmates and from the same family compound, so they had a good relationship. When they heard that there was a plum blossom forest here, the two children came by themselves. However, they didn't expect to trip on the exposed roots. They sprained their ankle and couldn't get up for a while. She was wearing thick clothes, and her attention was attracted by the pain on her body, so she didn't notice the thing under her butt. The pink jacket took out a small packet of tissue from her pocket and wiped her hands. She also let the furball girl wipe her wound. The furball girl originally wanted to find some snow to wash her wound, but she found that the snow had almost melted. There was only a thin layer of white around her. There was some black dust and other debris on the snow. She didn't feel safe using that to wash her wound. Therefore, after wiping her fingers with the tissue, the furball girl looked at her finger that was still faintly bleeding and stuck out her tongue to lick it. Zheng Tan and little Pomelo, seeing little Pomelo looking at her in surprise, the furball girl taught her seriously, "I once heard from my uncle that the saliva of a mouse contains a protein called nerve growth factor. Applying this protein to your wound will heal twice as fast as if you don't apply it." After saying that, she glanced at little Pomelo proudly, which meant, "Look at how awesome I am, knowing so much knowledge." Zheng Tan and little Pomelo. Idiot. The pink jacket girl looked around, as if the surrounding scenery was very charming. She acted as if she didn't hear the conversation. "There's this in human saliva too?" Little Pomelo asked. The furball girl paused, then said confidently, "Even if there isn't, it will still be useful. Trust me, it's right." The pink jacket girl continued to look at the surrounding scenery, and she became more serious. Little Pomelo sighed, took out a small box from her backpack, and handed it to the furball girl. Zheng Tan looked at it. It was a first aid kit. After Jiao Ma was discharged from the hospital, she had prepared a first aid kit for everyone in the family. Jiao Yuan and Gu Yuzi always had a small first aid kit in their backpacks. The things inside were all obtained from the affiliated hospital, so they didn't have to worry about using it. "What's this?" The girl took the first aid kit, opened it, and said, "Oh, I also have a first aid kit in my room, but I've never used it before." Her first aid kit was completely placed in her room as a decoration, and she had never thought of using it. When Zheng Tan took out a disinfectant wipe to wipe her injured finger, the girl screamed non-stop. It was so noisy that Zheng Tan wished she could plug her ears with her hands. When she was applying the band-aid, the girl felt that it would definitely hurt if someone else did it, so she used her other hand to apply it, which made it even more unbearable. Anyway, it wasn't a big wound. Many people couldn't be bothered to treat such a small wound. Besides, she would be going home soon, and her family would definitely treat it again when she got back, so the other two didn't say anything. "You're the second-year student who speaks English better than Chinese?" The furball girl finally remembered and asked. She had felt that the girl in front of her looked familiar. Once, a classmate told her that there was a second-year student who spoke English better than Chinese, and they went to take a look. They thought it was a foreign child, but they were disappointed and didn't pay much attention to it. When she first saw little Pomelo, she didn't pay much attention, but now she remembered. Yes, I remember your name was Pomelo or something." Even using little Pomelo's fruit hand soap was useless. The day before New Year's Eve, Zheng Tan went out for a walk. Many stores around the school were closed. Compared to the situation at the shopping center, the alleys from the school to Xiaoguo's pet center were much quieter. There were even very few cats. Zheng Tan heard from some people around that there were many people catching cats during New Year's Eve. A few cats around the area had disappeared. They must have been tricked and sold. When he was walking, Zheng Tan saw Li Yuanba patrolling the streets. Beside it was Peanut Candy. He didn't know if it was because Peanut Candy had only given birth to one cub, but when it was born, it was bigger than other cats of the same age. It also grew faster. Now, it was much bigger than other cats of the same age, and it fought fiercely. Chapter 45. Chinese New Year's Eve. Jiao Pa was in his bedroom, sorting out some theses and other documents on his computer. At the same time, he was also chatting with his foreign and domestic friends. Yuan Zi had gone back to her hometown for Chinese New Year. His mother was alone in her hometown. This year, she had to accompany the old lady and pay respects to the old man. Fei Heng and Celestine were taking care of the company. Jiao Pa also helped out from time to time. However, when Zheng Tan went for a walk a few days ago, she overheard Old Man Lan and the other professors talking about Father Jiao downstairs. Even though these retired professors were still influential, the news they got was always more reliable than other people's, so Zheng Tan hid beside them and eavesdropped. Jiao Pa's reputation in the university was rising mainly because he had taught an excellent graduate student. Xian's performance at the Academy's annual academic meeting before the new year had been outstanding. He had already published a high-impact factor thesis in a foreign journal, earning him the undisputed first place in the annual meeting. Not many people in the entire school could compare to him. This had overshadowed the other two students who were also named first place in the academy. Now, when people talked about Xian, they would definitely talk about Associate Professor Jiao. Without Associate Professor Jiao, Xian would not be who she was today. Everyone knew this. Therefore, Associate Professor Jiao's current momentum was comparable to the two young overseas professors that the university had recruited this year. Therefore, people in the university began to speculate when the Associate Professor Jiao would be removed from his title. After all, if Associate Professor Jiao continued to shine like this, the university would probably make an exception and promote him. In order to become a professor at Tsinghua University, apart from having an essay, there was another important condition that had to be met. That was, one had to have experience abroad. After Jiao Pa graduated, he came to Tsinghua University with Jiao Ma. Up until now, he had never done any research abroad. Jiao Pa had been spending a lot of time in front of the computer recently. This was probably the reason. He was preparing for this overseas experience. After all, a full professor would receive more benefits than an associate professor in all aspects, and they would be able to work more freely. Zheng Tan nestled on the edge of the sofa, rolled, and changed his position to continue lying down. Due to the constant reports of missing cats in the surrounding area, Zheng Tan did not go out at night for the past few days. As soon as the sun set, Zheng Tan would curl up on the sofa and watch Super Warriors with Jiao Yuan and Little Pomelo. Although it was rather boring for Zheng Tan, it was not unbearable. She lay on the sofa and thought. When she was tired, she slept. The Jiao Pa answered the call. After the two of them finished talking, the Jiao Pa asked Zheng Tan to answer the call. Zheng Tan jumped onto the desk next to him, puzzled. The Jiao Pa placed the phone next to Zheng Tan's feet. Zheng Tan leaned over to listen. Celestine's voice came from the other side. Black Charcoal, Senior Walnut wants me to congratulate you on his behalf. Happy New Year. Zheng Tan pulled his ears and breathed heavily through his nose, indicating that he understood. Why don't you call out? It's the new year, and you're going to do it like that? Celestine said. My comrades are all listening. How embarrassing would it be if I don't? After a pause, Zheng Tan finally gave him face and called out, "A woo." Ha ha ha, Celestine, it seems like you're talking to a dog. I thought it was Teacher Jiao's child. But this dog reminds me of the old wolfhound in the team that could answer the phone. Celestine's comrade's voice came from the other side of the phone. It's not a dog. I'm talking to a cat. Celestine explained, then said into the phone, Black Charcoal, they don't believe you. Why don't you meow? A woo. Meow my ass. Zheng Tan raised his paw and hung up. Then he went back to the sofa to wait for the New Year's Eve with the Jiao Ma and the two children. At the company, Celestine listened to the beeping sound from the phone and scolded jokingly, F***ck, this temper is still as bad as ever. Celestine's comrade next to him thought for a moment and asked, that sound just now, was it really a cat? It's true. If you don't believe me, you can ask my senior. Celestine handed the phone to the other comrade who hadn't made a call yet. They had a landline here, but there were too many people who wanted to make a call, so they were all waiting in line. Celestine didn't care about the phone bill and also offered his phone to those who didn't have a phone. On the other side, Zheng Tan accompanied them to watch the New Year's Eve for a while. When little Pomelo went back to her room to sleep, he followed her. For a cat, it was normal to spend most of the 24 hours in a day sleeping, so Zheng Tan didn't have any psychological burden at all. During the first lunar month, Zheng Tan had nothing to do with visiting relatives. However, as a cat, the thing she hated the most was those naughty little kids coming over to pull her tail. In order to avoid trouble, Zheng Tan would run out to play when there were guests at home. On this day, Zheng Tan didn't wander around the campus for long. He walked towards the pet center where Xiao Gua and the others were. Xiao Gua and the others stayed there for the New Year's Eve. There were also some employees in the pet center who didn't go home to have New Year's Eve dinner together. On the first day of the first lunar month, they continued to take turns to take care of the pets who were in foster care. The pet center's business was very prosperous this year. Perhaps because the scale of the pet center was larger, it felt more trustworthy, and the quality of the pet center had soared a lot. Especially the effect of the advertisements. Many people from other provinces knew about the store, Mingming, in Chuhua City. They knew that the store's cat food was very good, and the advertisements were very attractive. But so far, no one knew the identity of the black cat named Black Sea in the advertisements. The owner of the store, Xiao Gua, said that it was a trained cat that was hired. Some people believed it, and some people were skeptical. Zheng Tan didn't go directly to the pet center. He walked around a few streets from the school to the pet center. While walking, Zheng Tan heard some people talking. The general idea was that a few people's cats had disappeared in the past 2 days. Among them was the black cat that used to fight with Zheng Tan. Without the cats, and with the goods that were closed for the new year, the streets looked a lot more bleak and lifeless. When Zheng Tan walked around, he met Li Yuanba, who was patrolling the streets with peanut candy. The swallow was definitely not in the pet center for the new year, but Li Yuanba still stayed in the pet center. Anyway, the swallow would come back in a few days, so there was no need to move its nest here and there. Seeing Zheng Tan, peanut candy, who was walking beside Li Yuanba with a serious face, made a rare meow sound and greeted Zheng Tan. Xiao Guo once joked that Zheng Tan was like peanut candy's father. Otherwise, why would peanut candy not care about the other cats in the store? But when it saw Zheng Tan, it would meow a few times and occasionally roll around in front of Zheng Tan. These things didn't happen even in front of the swallow, so sometimes the swallow was jealous of Zheng Tan. Who raised them? Zheng Tan didn't even lick his own fur, so he definitely wouldn't lick peanut candy's fur, nor would it meow. Zheng Tan didn't like to make a sound, because every time it made a sound, it would stimulate the nerves in its brain, reminding itself that it had changed from a human who could talk to a Mongol cat. However, in order to show its closeness to the younger generation, Zheng Tan would raise his palm and pat peanut candy's head. For peanut candy, it was used to Zheng Tan's way of greeting, so when Zheng Tan came close, it would lower its ears and extend its head to let Zheng Tan pat it. This child was teachable. Zheng Tan sighed with emotion. What an obedient kitten. It was much more likable than those little kids who only knew how to pull his tail. However, when peanut candy meowed, Jing Tan found that the little guy's two fangs had grown a lot longer. It wasn't easy to notice them usually, but when it opened its mouth, it could be seen. Jing Tan had worked with kittens before in advertisements, so he knew how big and long the fangs of kittens were. In comparison, peanut candy had a lot of teeth. After greeting, Li Yuanba continued to patrol the streets with peanut candy, and Jing Tan didn't walk with them. Jing Tan wasn't worried that Li Yuanba would be taken away by the cat traffickers, and with it there, peanut candy would be fine. When they came to an alley in an old building area, Jing Tan heard a lot of noise in front of him. Many people were talking about something. Jing Tan was about to change his route, but suddenly he heard words like cat abuse, kitten, and so pitiful. There were a lot of people there, and Jing Tan couldn't get close. Looking around, Jing Tan climbed up the broken wooden ladder by the wall and jumped from the wooden ladder to the surrounding wall. When he got close to the scene, he jumped to the balcony of a resident inside the wall. It was not easy to be found there, and it was convenient for Jing Tan to observe the situation there. The door on the balcony of this house was also tightly locked, and there was a layer of dust on the ground. The owner of the house had probably gone out for the new year, and it seemed that there was no one in the house for a few days. This was the main reason why Jing Tan chose this house. Jing Tan stood on a flower pot with only soil and no flowers, looking over there through the gap between two pieces of cloth that were drying there. There were a lot of people around, almost covering the center of the incident. From Jing Tan's angle, he couldn't see much, but when there was a lot of shouting and pushing, Jing Tan saw the situation on the ground through the gaps. There were 3 little tabby cats on the ground, less than a month old. They were lying motionless on the cold ground with blood on their bodies. Next to them was a big white cat with long fur. From time to time, it would go up and look at the 3 kittens on the ground, touching them with the tip of its nose. Then it would meow twice at the young man who was smoking and leaning against the wall 2 steps away. The sound sounded like crying to Jing Tan, and each sound was very long, like a wail. The young man who was smoking threw his coat aside, revealing his arm with a dragon tattoo. It looked scary, and maybe that was why some people around him didn't dare to say anything. Previously, someone had said something a little harsh, and he was punched twice by the young man with the dragon tattoo. If it weren't for the people around him, he might have been punched even harder. A few of the older people standing around were also kicked twice by him and were helped away by others. From the noise of these people, Jing Tan got a general idea. This cat lived next door, but its owner's family moved away before the new year. They didn't bring it because it was too troublesome, not to mention that there was a litter of kittens that hadn't been weaned. As a neighbor, the man with the dragon tattoo said that he would take in these cats. The family was in a hurry to leave. Although they knew that this fierce neighbor was not easy to get along with, and the cats would definitely suffer if they followed him, they didn't say much in the end and left with their luggage. The tattooed man took in these cats with the intention of selling them for money in the future. As for the food that he gave the cats, he would give them some of his food if they remembered. If they didn't, it was fine. Not every cat had a strong stomach like Jing Tan. Unable to eat the food, the female cat had to go out to look for food. When she came back, she saw the tattooed man throwing the kittens. Chapter 46. Without a corresponding animal protection law, moral criticism alone would not be able to quell public anger. In this era, it was not like 10 years later where things could be posted on the internet. However, even if it could attract more people's attention and criticism, it would not be enough to punish the abuser. What was the use of criticism? What was the use of moral restraint? Could it bring the 3 kittens back to life, or could it give the female cat a fair treatment? Neither. The tattooed man did not even have to pay a fine. Moral criticism was like fart to him, blown away by the wind. What does it have to do with you that I threw my own cat? Meddling in other people's business, are you all tired of living? The tattooed man pointed at the muttering crowd around him and roared. The act of hitting someone just now obviously made the crowd a little worried. Their voices were not as loud as before, and the people who came out to criticize him were beaten down. The muscles and tattoos on his body, coupled with his style, were obviously not easy to deal with. He might even kill someone. Hurry up and get lost. What are you doing in front of my house? Are you looking for a beating? The tattooed man pushed the people around him away, and the circle of people gradually left. As they left, a few aunties sighed softly, saying things like, "Sinful, that cat is so pitiful." In fact, there were many similar things. In this city, similar things might happen every day. For a cat, there was no relative fairness, not even an absolute protection system. The only thing it could rely on was a good owner, or it could become as tough as Li Yuanba. However, living in this big city made of steel and mud, even Li Yuanba chose a nest and a swallow that would take care of and help it. What kind of life would a lone cat lead? Zheng Tan only knew some things from other people. Some people said that such stray cats could also lead good lives. However, after seeing the scene today, Zheng Tan had some doubts. There were definitely some that led good lives, but there were also some that led bad lives. The 3 kittens on the ground were finally cleaned up by an old man. He wrapped them in a towel and took them away. The big cat followed behind the old man, meowing as it walked. The tattooed man stood at the side and smoked. He sneered as he watched the old man clean up and even flicked the cigarette butt over. Aren't they just a few stupid cats? Don't make a fuss. Bah. The tattooed man spat on the bloody ground, humming a tune as he walked away. Zheng Tan followed behind the old man. He watched the old man walk into a side door of Chu Hua University and bury the kitten wrapped in a towel in a small forest. After it was buried, the old man sat on the ground and panted. He looked at the big white cat that was circling around the place and reached out to stroke the big white cat's head. Although this place is a little far from the other side, the old building area will probably be demolished in 2 years. The buried things will also be dug up. But not here. This is a very good university. The environment is good, and the people are better. Live well in the future. Why don't you come with me? I don't live in that old residential area. I'll live around here. Although the conditions aren't good, it won't starve you. Zheng Tan did not know if the big white cat understood Sir System's words. It just stuck close to the ground where the kitten was buried and lay there motionlessly. The old man wanted to pick it up, but it struggled and refused to move. The old man waited for a while and then picked it up again. This time, the big cat did not struggle. Zheng Tan squatted not far away and watched them. After they left, Zheng Tan was still squatting there. Nobody knew what he was thinking. His mind was a little messy, but it also seemed like he was not thinking about anything. When he came back to his senses, the sky was already dark. He moved a little. Perhaps it was because he had been squatting like this for too long, his whole body was a little stiff and cold. Zheng Tan took a few deep breaths and slowly moved his body. Only then did he become active and jog back to the East family compound. When Zheng Tan returned home, Jiao Pa was sweeping the floor. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were helping to clean up. Jiao Ma was washing the dishes in the kitchen. The house was filled with the smell of alcohol and strangers. However, seeing familiar people and smelling familiar smells still made Zheng Tan feel at ease. After crawling into little Pomelo's bed that night, Zheng Tan did not feel like sleeping. Little Pomelo next to him was already asleep. Zheng Tan's eyes were still open. He stared at the ceiling in the house and did not fall asleep until 3:00 in the morning. However, he did not sleep well. He kept dreaming about what he saw today and the 3 kittens lying on the ground. Zheng Tan dreamed that he was standing on the blood-stained ground and looking at the tattooed man who was leaning against the wall and smoking a cigarette. The 3 kittens were lying next to him. There was a circle of people whose faces could not be seen. Because of some of the scenes in his dream, Zheng Tan, who was dreaming, reached out his claws and scratched little Pomelo's quilt. The next day, Jiao Ma looked at the scratched quilt and said, "I guess black charcoal is dreaming about catching mice. But black charcoal doesn't look very good today." Little Pomelo pointed at Zheng Tan who was listless on the sofa and said, Zhao Yuan stared at Jing Tan for a while and then raised his hand to lift Jing Tan up. Black Cat Warrior, transform. Jing Tan was still listless. He did not slap Zhao Yuan's hand away like last time. He did not struggle and let Zhao Yuan play with him. Black Cat Warrior, transform. Zhao Yuan tried again and saw that black charcoal was still the same. He hurriedly said to Zhao Ma, "Mom, something is wrong with black charcoal." Zhao Ma did not have time to mend the quilt. She quickly lifted Jing Tan up and looked at him. "Black charcoal, what's wrong with you?" Jing Tan groaned weakly. "Quickly call Xiao Gua and take black charcoal to see a doctor. Don't let him catch a cold," Zhao Ma said to Zhao Pa next to her. After the call, Zhao Pa rode a small electric bike and took Jing Tan to Xiao Gua's place. The three people who stayed at home could not sit still. They went out of the east gate and called a taxi to the pet center. Hearing that Jing Tan was sick, Xiao Gua hurriedly put down his work and went to his brother's clinic in person. He wanted his brother to take a closer look. Xiao Gua's brother carefully checked Jing Tan's physical characteristics and said, "It doesn't look like it's sick. It's just in a bad mood." In a bad mood? Jing Tan was indeed in a bad mood. He could not tell what he was feeling. He just felt depressed and anxious. In short, he was all kinds of irritable. It was fine when it went out yesterday. When it came back, it was not in a good mood. "I thought it was because it was tired from playing outside," Zhao Pa said. "What happened when it went out yesterday?" Xiao Gua was puzzled. Xiao Gua's brother thought for a while and said, "I heard yesterday that someone in the alley in the old building district threw 3 kittens to death." "Was that the reason?" "What? What happened?" Xiao Gua asked. He had been editing photos in the studio yesterday and did not know what had happened outside. Xiao Gua's brother told him what he knew. Jing Tan wanted to cover his ears. He seemed to see the scene in his dream again. The scene made him very uncomfortable and depressed. Jing Tan sighed to himself. He did not expect himself to be so king fragile. Wasn't he always fearless in the past? Was it because he did not sleep well? Well, it must be because he did not get enough sleep. As she thought about it, Jing Tan closed her eyes and fell asleep while the 3 people beside her were talking. After the 3 people finished talking, they looked at the black cat that was sleeping. They were speechless for a moment. Maybe it's because it did not sleep well? No one would be in a good mood if they did not sleep well, Xiao Gua said helplessly. After confirming that their cat was not injured, the Jiao family was relieved. When Jing Tan woke up, he was already in the Jiao family. The sky was dark. "He's awake. He's awake." Zhao Yuan shouted excitedly. Little Pomelo was sitting next to him. Zhao Ma and Zhao Pa hurried over when they heard the noise. After sleeping, Jing Tan felt much better. He ate a big bowl of rice that Zhao Ma had prepared for him. After eating, Jing Tan stretched his body. The black cat that was listless in the morning was alive again. Okay. Hurry up and get dressed. It's cold at night, Zhao Ma said to the 2 children. What? Were they going out? Jing Tan looked at the 4 people who were getting dressed. Mom, let's bring black charcoal with us, Zhao Yuan said. Zhao Ma did not answer immediately. She looked at Zhao Pa. Zhao Pa thought for a moment. Bring him with you. Use your bag. But there will be too many people watching the fireworks. You have to be careful. Okay. Watch the fireworks? Jing Tan looked at the calendar. It was already the 6th day of the Chinese New Year. On the 6th day of the Chinese New Year, there would be many people watching the fireworks at the central department store. After packing up, the 4 Jiao family and their cat went out. As they walked, they bumped into some other people from the residential area. There were also some staff members from the Shi family area. Everyone smiled and greeted them. Jiao Pa was carrying Zhao Yuan's bag. Jing Tan stayed inside and looked out through the zipper. There were many people walking towards the central department store. Almost all the people walking around were heading there. When they arrived, there were already many people standing in the square in front of the central department store. Zhao Yuan wanted to squeeze in, but Zhao Pa stopped him. They found a place to stand. Don't get too close. There's a lot of dust falling there, and it's easy to get hurt. It's not too far from here, Zhao Pa said. It was only 7:00. There was still half an hour before the fireworks. They purposely came early to reserve seats. Zhao Pa chose a place close to the center. When there were more people, the outside would be blocked. There were a few high platforms around the square. The platforms were all blocked off, and there was a certain distance between them and the audience. Those places were where the fireworks would be set off. When it was almost time for the fireworks, Zhao Ma took out a pair of glasses and masks and handed them to the two kids. The glasses were flat lenses to prevent the dust from falling into the eyes. The masks were to prevent the dust from falling into the eyes. The masks were to prevent the dust from falling on the eyes. Zhao Pa carried his bag in front of his chest. He and Zhao Ma stood in the middle to protect the two kids. Zheng Tan looked around curiously through the zipper of his bag. There were people everywhere. It was much denser than when they first arrived. Suddenly, all the street lights in the square went out. As the lights went out, the people in the square went silent. Then, they started whispering again. This was the prelude to the fireworks. After the lights went out, Zheng Tan's entire head was exposed. There was no light at this time. No one would expect someone to bring a cat to watch the fireworks. Boom! A huge firework bloomed in the sky, opening the curtains. Boom! Boom! The roar of the fireworks was endless. Zheng Tan looked up at the sky. Because they were close, the fireworks looked like they were blooming above their heads. The people standing below seemed to be about to be burned by the falling sparks. These sparks gradually died out as they approached the crowd below. In the end, only some dust fell down. Each spark looked weak and monotonous, but when these sparks gathered together, they had an irresistible charm. It was different from watching on TV, and it was also different from watching from afar. The blooming fireworks dominated all the light in the sky at this moment. It was bright and colorful. For the people standing below, this colorful scene seemed to be within reach. Zheng Tan felt that the frustration in his heart seemed to explode with the sound of the fireworks. It shattered and disappeared with the night wind. Suddenly, he felt like he was enlightened. Of course, if you ignored the falling dust and the pungent smell, it would be better. Not far from them, a parent was afraid that his child would run around, so he held him in his arms. Some dust might have gotten into the child's eyes. He lowered his head and rubbed his eyes. When he opened them again to look around, he saw the cat's head on the Zhao Pa's school bag hanging in front of his chest. The cat's ears were still bouncing because of the falling dust. "Dad, there's a cat," however, the child's voice was drowned out by the roar of the fireworks. Only his father heard a little. "What? Your eyes still hurt. Come, let me blow on them." The child slapped his father away. "There's a cat, yes, yes, there are fireworks, fireworks. Look, the fireworks are so beautiful." The child was speechless. When the fireworks finally stopped, the crowd gradually began to disperse. The Jiao Pa waited for the crowd to disperse before he began to walk out. The Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were still excited. On the way home, they kept talking about which fireworks were beautiful. The firefighters must be very busy today. The Jiao Ma sighed. When they got home, everyone had a strong smell on them. They scrubbed hard. Zheng Tan also took a long bath. After the bath and drying his fur, Zheng Tan crawled into little Pomelo's bed. Little Pomelo wrote a diary entry before going to bed. Similar to the previous entries, after she finished writing, she would press Zheng Tan's paw on the paper and draw a circle around it. Then, she would add a few more strokes. Therefore, in most of the entries, there was a drawing of a cat's paw at the end. After little Pomelo turned off the lights and went to bed, Jingtan poked his head out of the blanket. He stretched out his hand and revealed the sharp claws that he had retracted. If he wanted to know whether or not it was snowing, and how heavy the snow was, he had to either wipe away the water droplets or open the window to look. If he did not open the window, there would be a layer of water vapor, and the truth would become hazy. Jingtan came to the window in the living room, stood on the windowsill, and looked at the water droplets on the glass. He leaned forward and exhaled. One of the water droplets on the window began to slide down. When it met other water droplets, the water droplets became bigger and slid faster. When it really fell on the window edge, it was unknown how many water droplets had gathered on the glass. If every water droplet was a preparation before the action, then in the end, when the time was ripe, would it be as easy as exhaling? Swinging his tail, Jingtan prepared to go out for a walk to clear his mind. The room was too warm and comfortable, making Jingtan sleepy. Black charcoal, are you going out? Little Pomelo, who was preparing to peel candy, saw Jingtan walking towards the door and said, "Come back when it's time to eat. Otherwise, you'll be hungry. If you don't come back when it's time to eat, your drumstick will be mine." Jiao Yuan emphasized the word drumstick. Jiao Ma prepared 3 drumsticks for the 2 children and Jingtan to eat at dinner. Hearing Jiao Yuan's words, Jingtan snorted from his nose, indicating that he understood. After leaving the building, Jingtan looked at the layer of snow on the ground. Jingtan walked up and his limbs were almost submerged. There was a bit of resistance when he walked out. However, for Jingtan, this was nothing. He walked out step by step. On the pure white snow, a black figure moved out of the family building. It was very conspicuous from above. However, at this time, it seemed that not many people had the leisure to go out and enjoy the cold wind and snow. Jingtan could touch the snow on the ground when he lowered his head, and a cool breeze blew on his face. There was no wind, only a large amount of falling snow. Jingtan looked up at the falling snow, shook his ears, and flicked the snow that fell on his ears, and continued to walk forward. The coolness around him made Jingtan's mind a lot clearer, and the sleepiness that accumulated at home disappeared without a trace. Jingtan was walking towards the door of the family building when he suddenly heard barking from not far away. Behind the barking, there was a person shouting, "Sahara, come back." The response was Sahara's figure running further and further away. After running for a while, it stopped and looked in the direction of its building and barked twice. If it saw someone chasing it, it didn't need to chase far. Sahara would immediately continue to run away as if it had been injected with chicken blood. It was usually like this. During the New Year, there were many guests coming in and out of its house. When there were guests, the door was often opened. After all, there were many people coming to visit, and it was difficult to control. Sahara's owner had originally tied it up, but a child had unbuckled the dog's neck while playing. Sahara then took the opportunity to squeeze out of the house while guests were coming in and out. Its owner still had to take care of the guests, and at this time, he wouldn't abandon the guests to chase after the dog. Besides, this kind of situation had happened several times during the winter holidays. There was no need to worry too much. In less than an hour, Sahara would naturally come back. However, when it came back, it would either be covered in mud or other things. In short, it had to be thoroughly washed. The neighbors had long been used to this kind of thing, and every time they saw this situation, they would have the same thought, happy to see this. Sahara ran out of the house. Since it was much bigger than Jingtan, it was easy for it to run in the snow. When it ran, its hind legs kicked the snow into the air. Jingtan didn't know if it was intentional or not, but he had never seen Little Flower and Niu Zhuangzhuang like this before. After Sahara ran past Jingtan, it suddenly stopped and turned to look at Jingtan in the snow. "Woof woof. Woof my ass." Jingtan ignored it and continued to walk towards the door. Sahara stood there for a while. When it saw that Jing Tan really didn't intend to pay attention to it, it wagged its tail and walked towards Jing Tan. When it walked, Jing Tan could even hear the sound of its toenails grinding on the concrete floor. When it got close to Jing Tan, Sahara suddenly rushed over, raised one of its front legs, and pushed Jing Tan diagonally with the sole of its foot, pushing Jing Tan into the snow. It didn't use too much strength, so it wouldn't hurt Jing Tan. Jing Tan didn't expect this guy to suddenly do this. He didn't pay attention and fell into the snow, burying his entire face in it. After the successful attack, Sahara ran away happily. Jing Tan shook the snow off his body and shook his head to get rid of the snow stuck to his face. F***CK. Sahara, you F***king deserve a beating. Jing Tan dashed over with a whoosh. He was no longer moving slowly in the snow. His speed was not any slower than Sahara, who was running in front of him. He used his jumping advantage to leap onto the circular flower bed in the middle of the road and walked in a straight line. When the guard opened the window, he saw Associate Professor Jiao's black cat chasing after the mixed-blood dog raised by Academician Ruan's grandson. It didn't care about Sahara's teeth, and the black cat raised its paw and slapped it repeatedly. When the guard saw this, he laughed. He remembered how his son used to slap a spinning top when he was young. Even at his fastest speed, he didn't slap as fiercely as the cat. Well done. Sahara is asking for a beating. The guard closed the window, took a sip of sorghum wine, and picked up 2 peanuts. He clicked his tongue twice, then lay down and continued to watch Chinese New Year programs on the small TV with his legs crossed. After Jing Tan was tired, he stood there panting. When Sahara saw that Jing Tan was no longer slapping, it stuck out its tongue and panted. Perhaps it felt a little thirsty, so it lowered its head and licked the snow on the ground. When it licked, it made a patter sound. Sahara wasn't satisfied with licking the snow, so it directly rolled on the snow. It rolled to the side of a slope, then rolled down the slope. Below the slope was the tennis court in the family area. It was blocked by a wire fence, but the slope was still about 10 meters long. After Jing Tan saw Sahara roll out of sight, he went to the slope to take a look. After rolling to the bottom of the slope, Sahara shook its fur, looked around, and then rushed up the slope. Originally, Jing Tan thought that Sahara would go somewhere to have fun after coming up, but in the next moment, this guy rolled down again. It seemed that it didn't slide fast enough, twisting and turning as it slid down. Jing Tan looked at the dog that was having fun, shook his head, and walked towards the gate. There were very few people walking around the campus, only a few sporadic people, and not many vehicles. The people from the school security office were wearing thick coats and shoveling the snow. They first shoveled some of the snow that was more prone to accidents. Jing Tan came to the place where the 3 kittens were buried, and looked at it from a few meters away. No one came here, and there were no other traces in the snow. Jing Tan didn't know how the big white cat was doing now. After the old man took it away last time, Jing Tan hadn't seen it, and he didn't know where the old man lived. However, the old man said that he lived nearby. Since it wasn't far, they would meet in the future. Jing Tan walked around some parts of the campus, but he didn't go to the forest where he climbed the tree. It was too far away. After walking around a few places, Jing Tan looked at the sky and decided to go to Old Man Land's small flower garden. Jing Tan found that Old Man Land's small flower garden actually had a lot of treasures. As long as he was good at finding things, he could always find what he wanted. Before the Chinese New Year, Old Man Land's house always had visitors. Recently, he didn't come to the small flower garden much. However, the parts that needed to be taken care of were taken care of by Old Man Lan before the Chinese New Year. Other times, he would occasionally come to check on the temperature and humidity in the greenhouse. Jing Tan climbed over the wall as usual. The transparent greenhouse was piled with a thick layer of snow, and if he wasn't careful, he would slip. The greenhouse was still piled with wooden boxes. Jing Tan didn't immediately jump down from the transparent greenhouse. Instead, he stood on the edge of the greenhouse and looked down at the small flower garden. With his eyes closed, Jingtan slightly raised his head. A snowflake fell on the bridge of his nose and slowly melted. There was a delicate fragrance of plum blossoms in the air. The snowflakes fell on the leaves and made a slight rustling sound. Jingtan couldn't reach the state of being one with nature like Zhuangzhou and Meng Dai. He just suddenly wanted to sit here quietly for a while. Just a while. A sneeze interrupted the tranquility of the small flower garden. Other cats would lick their noses after sneezing, but Jingtan didn't. He still kept the habit from when he was a human and sniffed his nose. F*ck, hurry up and go home after taking a look. It's too F*king cold. I'm all wet. Jumping down from the wooden box, Jingtan found a few flower sheds. Finally, he stopped in front of a flower shed with a sign saying "Unauthorized personnel do not enter," and a warning sign. The flower shed was locked, and even the windows were tightly shut. Jingtan couldn't get in through the ventilation. But it didn't matter. Jingtan's purpose was just to take a look. Unfortunately, the transparent flower shed had a temperature control. The inner wall was covered with a layer of water vapor and some traces of water droplets. Jingtan couldn't see the situation inside very clearly. Swinging his tail, Jingtan sat for a while and left. He would come back to take a look next time. Chapter 48. When Jingtan returned to the Jiao family, its outer layer of fur was wet. It had stayed in the snow for too long, and when it went out, the snow was quite heavy. It would be strange if it wasn't wet. Fortunately, its fur was thick, so it could still keep warm. However, when the cold wind blew outside, Jingtan couldn't help but shiver. Seeing Jingtan come back with wet fur, little Pomelo quickly took out the hairdryer to dry Jingtan's fur. The snow outside is so thick. I didn't see any other cats in the courtyard. Only our black charcoal went out for a walk, Jiao Yuan said. And Sahara. As they were talking, there was a barking sound coming from downstairs. Jingtan heard it clearly. It was Sahara's barking. However, the barking was obviously lacking in energy. It was far less energetic than when it went out to play. Jiao Yuan laughed and immediately opened the window in the living room to look at the building diagonally opposite. Little Pomelo also moved a stool over, took off its slippers, and stepped on the stool to look at the situation outside the window. Jingtan was also a little curious. He jumped on the windowsill and looked in the direction of the barking. The dog below the building diagonally opposite was Sahara. At the same time, on the balcony of the building's second floor, Professor Ruan's grandson, Ruaning, was standing there. He leaned against the railing of the balcony, holding a bowl of seaweed and pork rib soup in his hands. As he drank, he smacked his lips and said to the dog that was licking its lips and jumping downstairs, "Run, try running again. Tonight's pork rib soup won't be served to you." Woof woof, woof woof woof. There was a little whimper in the barking. It was obviously weak. It wanted to go upstairs to eat the ribs, but it couldn't enter the door. Sahara's big paws patted the big iron door of the entrance control area. After patting it once, it retracted its paws. It remembered that this big iron door couldn't be patted randomly. If it did, it would be beaten when it went home later. Woof. In the end, Sahara squatted in front of the iron door and let out a flat whimper from its nose. It opened its mouth twice and yawned twice. It was not until more than 10 minutes later that its owner opened the door and let it in. He was afraid that it would get sick if it squatted outside for too long. As soon as they entered the door, the originally listless Sahara instantly regained its health. It wagged its big tail vigorously and even jumped up the stairs. There were many other people in the courtyard who were watching the drama like Jiao Yuan and the others. Due to the different residential areas, some of them were watching from their balconies, while others were watching from the windows of their bedrooms or living rooms. Sometimes, there would be people who would kick up a fuss. Just now, someone had asked Sahara to go to their house to gnaw on a bone. Then it shouldn't be a big problem. We can give it some children's medicine. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Over the phone, Xiaogua heaved a sigh of relief. He still had some Spring Festival advertisements waiting for this cat. Otherwise, they would have wasted a lot of food in the store. After hearing Little Gua's explanation, they felt much more at ease. Jiao Ma made some children's medicine. She didn't need to find a syringe to feed it to Zheng Tan. Cats were different from humans. Zheng Tan didn't want to make himself half dead. During dinner, the members of the Jiao family paid close attention to Zheng Tan. Seeing that he still had a huge appetite, they felt more at ease at the dinner table. With such a big appetite, it shouldn't be too sick. At night, Jiao Ma suggested that Zheng Tan sleep on the sofa. Although she had never heard of cats passing the flu to humans, it was always better to take precautions. The 2003 SARS outbreak had alerted many people. It wasn't that she disliked Zheng Tan. Jiao Ma also cared about Zheng Tan. She had already prepared a place for him to sleep on the sofa. In addition to little Pomelo's fur cloak, there was also a woolen sweater from Jiao Ma. Zheng Tan definitely wouldn't catch a cold. Zheng Tan didn't want to pass the flu to others, so he decided to sleep on the sofa. If the flu became serious and was contagious, it wouldn't be good to pass it to others. Not long after the lights went out, little Pomelo opened the door and whispered to Zheng Tan to go to sleep. Zheng Tan didn't move. He only rolled around to make some noise. It was better to be safe than sorry. If he really passed the flu to little Pomelo, Zheng Tan would definitely feel that he had committed a grave sin. Little Pomelo meowed a few times. Seeing that Zheng Tan just turned around and didn't get off the sofa, little Pomelo walked over gently and put her hands on Zheng Tan. After making sure that the cat was breathing well and steadily, she went back to sleep. Not long after little Pomelo went back to sleep, Jiao Yuan did the same thing. In the bedroom, Jiao Ma put her ear against the door to listen to the sounds in the living room. Both kids went back to their rooms? Jiao Pa asked softly. Yes. They went back. I'll go out and take a look. Jiao Ma walked out of the room and tiptoed to the sofa. Zheng Tan didn't even bother to open his eyes this time. It was just a nap. 3 people came in half an hour. Early in the morning, while Zheng Tan was still sleeping, Jiao Ma came over to check his temperature. Zheng Tan slept in a ball, so it was hard to check his temperature in this position. Seeing that Zheng Tan opened his eyes, Jiao Ma put down the thermometer and touched Zheng Tan's head. Good boy, go back to sleep. Check your temperature. Zheng Tan was speechless. I'm not a kid. A few minutes later, Jiao Ma looked at the temperature on the thermometer and finally smiled. Looks like he's fine. In fact, Zheng Tan knew whether his flu was getting better or not. After taking some medicine and sleeping, he felt much better now. His nose didn't hurt as much as it did yesterday. Zheng Tan stretched and jumped off the sofa to go to the bathroom. Seeing Zheng Tan go into the bathroom, Jiao Ma said to Jiao Pa, why doesn't Black Charcoal's tail stick up? Other cats would stick up their tails when they were in a good mood, but Zheng Tan never did. Zheng Tan usually put his tail down diagonally. When it was about to touch the ground, the tip of his tail would stick up a little. There were many black cats in the world, but Jiao family members felt that their black cats were very different from other black cats. It was easy to recognize them when they were put together, because their black cats had small movements that could be easily recognized by people who were familiar with them. Who cares? No one says that a cat's tail has to stick up. Besides, our Black Charcoal is very sensible. It's just that sometimes it has a bad temper, Jiao Pa said. After peeing, Zheng Tan didn't feel sleepy for the time being. He jumped on the windowsill in the living room and looked outside. The sun was out. Last night, when he watched TV, the weather forecast said that it wouldn't snow for the next few days. The Chinese New Year was coming to an end, so there probably wouldn't be such heavy snow. There might even be no snow in the future. The family compound was still white yesterday, but today, when Zheng Tan saw that it had already been cleaned. It wasn't necessarily the work of the janitor or the person in charge of cleaning. Many people in the family compound couldn't help but come out to clean the snow. These 2 days, the Jiao family didn't have many guests. To be safe, Zheng Tan stayed at home for 2 days and didn't go out. On the 3rd day, when the Jiao family had guests again, Zheng Tan went out for a walk. After not going out for 2 days, he still felt uncomfortable. After coming out, Zheng Tan felt that his whole body was relaxed. After climbing a tree in the forest and warming up his body, Zheng Tan walked out. He didn't see Huang and the sheriff, so he went straight out of the school gate. Zheng Tan walked towards the place where the kitten was buried. When he went over to take a look, he saw footprints of people and cats. It should be the old man and the white female cat. The female cat was still alive and was with the old man. Even if the old man wasn't as rich as the family that moved away, at least there were people who cared about it. That was enough. After the weather cleared up, there were more people and cars on the road. It was very lively. Zheng Tan followed the familiar road to the alley in the old building area. He saw the tattooed man wearing a thick down jacket walking out of the alley. He scolded people whenever he bumped into them, regardless of whether it was because he was walking in an S-shaped way. Zheng Tan hid in the corner and watched him leave. The tattooed man also had a job. He helped people look after the place and was a follower. He also changed shifts several times a week. Today was the only time he changed shifts in a week. After he left, he probably found a corner to lie down and continue sleeping. Looking at him, he must have watched too many erotic movies last night and used up too much energy. After the tattooed man walked away, Zheng Tan took advantage of the time when no one was around to climb over the wall in the backyard of the old building area. The tattooed man lived on the 1st floor. The 1st floor was very big. The tattooed man even used a fence to mark out a piece of land. It was originally a public area for drying blankets, but he also occupied it. The people around him told him off, but it didn't work. Instead, they were intimidated. The doors and windows of the room were tightly shut, but the kitchen wasn't. There was a broken window in the kitchen. It looked like it had been there for a long time, but it hadn't been fixed. Zheng Tan went in through the broken window, careful not to scratch himself on the broken glass. After he went in, Zheng Tan looked around the small kitchen. It wasn't big to begin with, and there were piles of garbage everywhere. It looked even smaller. There were many disposable bowls and chopsticks around, and there were also instant noodle boxes that hadn't been thrown away. There was a layer of stains on the stove, and there was a dark layer on the floor. It had solidified. If he didn't scrape it hard, it probably wouldn't be clean. There was no gas jar, and the iron pot was rusty. Zheng Tan looked around. In the whole kitchen, the microwave was the most used thing. No wonder the kitchen window hadn't been fixed for a long time. The kitchen wasn't used much, so it didn't matter if it was fixed or not. The kitchen door was closed. Zheng Tan leaned against the door and listened to the movements outside. After confirming that there was no one in the house, he jumped up and turned the doorknob. The area of each house in the old building area wasn't big. It was about 60 or 70 square meters. There were piles of junk in the living room, and there was also a motorcycle. The brightest thing in the house was probably the motorcycle. It was obvious that the owner often cleaned it. Other than that, the other places were all kinds of junk and garbage. The unfinished takeout on the table hadn't been cleaned up. The rice grains on the ground were already dry and stuck to the floor. As for the bedroom, there were some magazines thrown on the floor. Each magazine cover was a scantily dressed big-breasted girl. The calendar hanging on the wall at the head of the bed was also in this style. There were a lot of things on the head of the bed. The ashtray was full, and there were many cigarette butts on the floor. What didn't match the environment was that there was a gift box of tea leaves and a Yixing clay teapot on the table. There was a card with a blessing written on it, but it wasn't the tattooed man's name. It looked like it was a gift for the old man. As for why the tattooed man had it, it was unknown. It probably wasn't something that could be exposed. After walking around, Zheng Tan didn't touch the things here. He went back the way he came, closed the kitchen door, and came out through the broken window. When there was no one around, he jumped over the wall and left. There was a small restaurant not far from the alley in the old building area. The owner probably knew that the surrounding area was going to be demolished. He also planned to move the store, so there were fewer things. However, business was still good during the New Year period. Now, many people would call the small restaurant to order food or book a private room when guests came to their house. The restaurant owner made a lot of money on New Year's Eve. The kitchen was next to the restaurant's main building. There were many people washing and cooking. Room 16, a box of beer. Okay, send it over right away. A waiter wearing the restaurant's uniform walked into the warehouse where the beer was stored. However, when he moved the beer, he found that one of the boxes was missing. There were originally 12 bottles, but now there were only 11 bottles left. Could it be that someone secretly drank it? Forget it. Even if someone secretly drank it, it didn't matter if they offended someone. Therefore, the waiter chose another box of 12 bottles of beer and moved it out. After knowing that the store was going to be moved, the management here wasn't as strict as before. In addition, the new year wasn't over yet. The store's business was still good. Sometimes when things got chaotic, people would pretend that they didn't know about it. Chapter 49. After the Lantern Festival, students from both Tsinghua University and the affiliated primary schools started attending classes one after another. School started. Some people were happy, while others were the opposite. From Jingtan's point of view, the students returned to school with more smiles than the kids from Tsinghua Elementary School. The first and second graders were still trying to find excuses to skip school. Some of the kids at the entrance of Tsinghua University's primary school had red eyes. They sniffled from time to time, but under the pressure of their parents, they slowly walked into the school. In contrast, the young people who were riding their bicycles were in a much better mood. They were anxious to find the girls they had not seen in a long time and missed. The sixth graders had a special mentality. They had mixed feelings of, I'm finally growing up, and, damn, there's still so much homework and exams, as they spent their last days in primary school. Jingtan did not know if every sixth grader had the same mentality. At least, Zhao Yuan was like that. The little kid always had an inexplicable sense of excitement and anxiety. Just like what Zhao Pa said, he was entering puberty. Children entering puberty, this meant that when he entered junior high, Zhao Yuan would not be a little kid anymore. He would be a young man. I guess I can read some books about sex in Zhao Yuan's room in the future. Jingtan laid on the sofa, the tip of his tail wagging slowly. He watched as Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo left the house. Zhao Ma sent them off. After sending the children off, she went to buy groceries. Jingtan did not go out during the day for the past few days. The school was full of people and it was very lively. After the new students returned to school, the school, which had been quiet for the entire winter break, became noisy again. Jingtan did not want to go out at this time. It was inconvenient. Therefore, Jingtan changed her schedule. During the first week of school, she would sleep at home during the day and go out after dinner at night to do some scouting. After these few nights, Jingtan had a better understanding of the tattooed guy's schedule. However, it was still not enough. He had to make sure that he would succeed on the first try. Therefore, he had to watch him a few more times. Moreover, he was still lacking some materials. There were some things that he had yet to find. Jingtan lay on the sofa and closed his eyes for a while. When he woke up, he found that it was only 9:30. Jiao Ma was not back yet. He guessed that she had gone to chat with someone. Jingtan stretched and looked out the window. The sun was shining brightly, but the temperature was still not high. The people walking around were still wearing thick down jackets. Bored and unable to sleep, Jingtan decided to go out for a walk. After the new year, Huang had become much lazier and fatter. Zheng Tan often saw Huang sleeping on the balcony of his house. His head peeked out a little from the gap between the balcony railings, and his tail was swinging out from time to time, as if he was afraid that no one would know that he was sleeping there. Fortunately, the gap between the railings wasn't very big, so Huang wouldn't fall through the gap. As for the sheriff, his family had tied him up at home. Because there were many cat traffickers trapping cats during the new year, after some of the surrounding cats disappeared, the sheriff, who often ran out, was ordered not to leave the house, even if he screamed. Without them around, Zheng Tan was free to do whatever she wanted. After climbing a tree for a while, Zheng Tan walked out of the forest where there were fewer people. At this time, there weren't many people walking on the campus. Perhaps it was because the campus had some people, but the 2 rows of bare sycamore trees by the driveway didn't seem so bleak. Zheng Tan walked aimlessly along the sunny places. There was no wind, and the sun shone on his body, making his fur feel warm and fluffy. It was very comfortable. Zheng Tan squinted his eyes and enjoyed the warm sunlight. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. Looking in the direction of the voice, Zheng Tan saw a person wearing a long, loose fur coat standing on the other side of the flower bed, waving at him. Little Joie? Zheng Tan turned and walked towards Little Joie. Compared to the last time Zheng Tan saw her, Little Joie's belly was clearly protruding now. Even the loose winter clothes couldn't hide the protruding arc. Little Joie was holding a bag in her hand. There was a book in the bag that looked like it was newly bought. She probably just came back from the bookstore in front of the campus. What are you doing here? Little Joie looked at Zheng Tan and asked. She bent down and reached out to gently tap Zheng Tan's forehead. Little Joie knew that the person in front of her was a cat and couldn't speak, but she still asked out of habit. People who spent a lot of time with animals would do the same when they saw other animals. They would speak directly instead of mimicking them. Zheng Tan didn't dare to get close to Little Joie. Looking at her belly, what if something happened? She looked like she was having trouble bending down. Also, didn't they say that pregnant women avoided cats because of toxoplasmosis? Looking around, Zheng Tan realized that he had unknowingly approached the West Family District. So, Little Joie had been living in the West Family District all this time? Come to my place to play. Little Joie took 2 steps and stopped. She turned around and looked at Zheng Tan expectantly. Zheng Tan stood in place and thought about it. He had recovered from his cold for a while. As for toxoplasmosis, he shouldn't have it, right? He seemed to be very healthy and bathed often. He slept in the same bed as little Pomelo every day. Seeing that little Pomelo was fine, he shouldn't be able to infect Little Joie. After hesitating for a while, Zheng Tan looked at the expectant Little Joie and started walking. Seeing that Zheng Tan was following her, Little Joie immediately smiled. She walked in front of Zheng Tan and told him some things that had happened in the past few months. Little Joie didn't usually talk to people. There were only a few people she could talk to. However, Little Joie wouldn't directly say what was on her mind to them. She would always be considerate towards people, but it was different with cats. It was easier for people to speak their mind to animals or objects of spiritual sustenance. This was also a way to vent. Some people kept pets for this reason. Later on, Little Joie's belly was getting bigger and bigger. It wasn't convenient for her to move around and needed to rest. Lord Zheng was worried that Little Joie would run around every day. Coincidentally, the new buildings in the West Family District were being allocated at that time. Lord Zheng gave Little Joie his own unit. People like Lord Zheng had already gained both fame and fortune. They didn't care about such a house at all. Normally, Lord Zheng wouldn't fight with the other teachers. However, for Little Joie, Lord Zheng really did. With one sentence from Lord Zheng, everyone else had to step aside. At this time, there weren't many people walking around outside in the West Family District. During working hours, there were only a few people in the district. The buildings in the West Family District were very new. Some of the buildings were similar to the buildings in the East Family District. However, the exterior looked much more gorgeous and fashionable. The greenery was okay, but it was definitely not as good as the East Family District. Even though the buildings were bright and shiny, Jingtan was still not used to it. Perhaps he was used to the old houses in the East Family District. Facing these shiny new buildings, Jingtan always felt that something was missing. Jingtan remembered the time when he first came to this place. Many of the family buildings in the East Family District were covered with creepers. The surrounding trees were lush and there were people setting up grape trellis in the corner of the courtyard. In the evening, some old people sat there, waving the brown-speckled bamboo fans in their hands and chatting. Some people said that nostalgia was a kind of emotion. This was indeed the case. The years had eroded the feelings of several generations. Perhaps this was the reason why those old professors were still willing to live in that small old house. After living in the East Family District for a while, Jingtan really felt the calmness in the simplicity. Little Zhuo didn't live in the houses that Jingtan saw after entering the district. It was further inside. The West Family District was much larger than the East Family District, so in addition to the main entrance, there were several side entrances. The part in front of the main entrance was a 6-story building. Further inside, there were a few newly built elevator rooms. This place was very close to one of the side entrances. Little Zhuo sometimes went in and out of this side entrance. It was more convenient to go outside the school. Today, she just wanted to go for a walk on campus after buying some books. She didn't expect to run into Jingtan. It wasn't easy to get a spot for these elevator rooms. Jingtan followed Little Zhuo into the elevator. There was no one else in the elevator. If other people were there, they would definitely wonder why there was a cat in the elevator. A cat taking an elevator? Little Zhuo pressed the button for the 6th floor, which was in the middle of the building. This is where I live now. After exiting the elevator, Little Zhuo pointed to the apartment number 606. There were even Spring Festival couplets. When Little Zhuo opened the door, Jingtan walked in and found that there were other people inside. So he stopped at the door and sniffed. Seeing Jingtan's reaction, Little Zhuo smiled and said, "Teacher Yi asked someone to take care of me, but she's not here today. She has something to do." Lord Zheng was really considerate. But also, with such a big belly, no one would be at ease. Jingtan thought. Jingtan glanced at the furnishings in the room. It was about 100 square meters. The lighting was good, the decoration was modern, and the color was very warm. There were a few fruit baskets on the table. There were all kinds of fruits inside, and there was another basket with other food. Jingtan jumped on the table and looked at the basket. There were some preserved fruits and sour plums inside. They were all sent by Teacher Ye's family. I can't even finish them. Do you want some? Little Zhuo grabbed a handful of peeled walnuts and peanuts from a bag. After taking them out, she hesitated. She didn't know if cats could eat these. Regardless of whether other cats could or not, Jingtan ate them. Stay for lunch. Little Zhuo touched Jingtan's head and said. Jingtan pulled his ears. A lonely pregnant woman, forget it. I'll reluctantly stay and accompany you for a while. Jingtan looked at the peeled nuts in the bag. He would eat some snacks and sleep. It would probably be late afternoon. Actually, it wasn't that hard. Little Zhuo didn't know if the cat in front of her understood her words. After class, she called Jiao Pa and explained the situation. It also saved the Jiao family from waiting anxiously at home. Little Zhuo knew that the cat in front of her was very important to the Jiao family. When Jiao Ma was hospitalized, Little Zhuo went to visit her and heard some things about the black cat. The Jiao family really valued this cat. Moreover, Little Zhuo didn't want to treat this black cat like the other cats in the courtyard. This black cat was different. At noon, the nanny hired by Lord Xing came back to cook. When the nanny saw Jingtan, her expression was one of horror. She felt that pregnant women shouldn't get too close to cats. Cats like to run around, play with insects, eat mice, and get into a lot of things. Who knew what diseases they carried? The nanny said a few words about the germs and parasites that the cat might carry and the effects of these germs and parasites on the fetus. But Xiao Zhuo only grunted twice to show that he had heard him. Then, he continued to lay Jing Tan down beside him, close to him. Seeing that her reminder didn't work, the nanny called Lord Zheng in the kitchen to report the situation. "There's a cat." Lord Zheng's voice raised a lot. It sounded like he didn't agree. "Yes, yes." The nanny sensed Lord Zheng's dissatisfaction and continued, "And it's a black one." In the nanny's house, some people thought that black cats weren't auspicious, so she didn't have a good impression of cats with pure black fur. "Black?" Lord Zheng's voice lowered and sounded much calmer. "Yes." "Black charcoal?" I think so. That's what little Zhuo calls it." "Then don't worry about it." "Huh. This black cat is different." When Lord Zheng knew that Xiao Zhuo was familiar with the cat, he specifically investigated the cat's diet and other living conditions, as well as its habits and temper. The results of the investigation satisfied Lord Zheng, otherwise, he wouldn't have treated a small associate professor with such a different attitude. "Oh." After hanging up the phone, the nanny was still very confused. What was different about this black cat? The nanny looked at the black cat squatting on the moon chair in the bedroom and shook her head. She didn't see anything special. It was similar to the black cats she had seen before, and it didn't have an extra ear or an eye. In the end, the nanny concluded that Lord Zheng and little Zhuo's attitudes were scientific researchers' rationality. Jing Tan squatted on a softly cushioned moon chair in little Zhuo's room and put his hands together. Jing Tan learned this posture from De Pang and the others. When he first saw De Pang in this posture, Jing Tan was puzzled. What was this egg-hatching posture for? Then, Jing Tan put a quail egg-sized round stone between De Pang's two paws. Well, that was more like egg-hatching. Jing Tan still remembered De Pang's helpless look. Then, De Pang moved his front paws and pushed the stone out. Later, when Jing Tan saw Huang squatting in this posture, he did the same thing. In the end, Huang just squinted his eyes and meowed. Then, he didn't move. So every time Jing Tan saw Huang squatting like this, he had the idea of putting a stone in it. Maybe he could just put an egg in it to see? Later, Jing Tan found that many cats liked this posture. It seemed that when cats were in this posture, they felt more at ease and weren't ready to move their paws. So, Jing Tan learned to squat like this and put his hands together. He heard that this was called a farmer's pocket. After getting used to it, Jing Tan felt that this feeling was okay. The smell of food came from the kitchen. Little Zhuo, who was lying on the deck chair, put away the book and rubbed his eyes. He looked at the black cat squatting on the moon chair and smiled silently. Maybe, in the future, he could raise a cat at home. It didn't need to be too expensive, just a common cat would do. It didn't need to be too hard-working. It was okay if he was lazy. It was okay if he liked to steal snacks. He bit on the rubber band that tied the bag and jumped down the tree with the bag. He went through the fence near the old building at the edge of the campus and rushed into the green flower beds. Under the cover of the plants in the flower beds and the darkness of the night, he quickly disappeared. And the surrounding cars that came and went in a hurry didn't notice the black shadow that flashed by. At this time, the old building alley was much more deserted than the central department store. It was a completely different scene. Occasionally, there were dim street lights, but many roads were dark. He could only vaguely see the general layout of the alley from the surrounding houses. As for other things, he couldn't see clearly at all. People who were on the night shift or going home after work, or people who rode electric bikes, would use flashlights to illuminate the area. In such an environment, no one would notice that there was a black cat squatting next to a trash can in the corner. Jing Tan estimated the time in his heart. According to the situation he learned a while ago, the tattooed man would leave home at 9 o'clock most of the time and go to the club where he worked. Sure enough, not long after, the tattooed man's voice came. There was another person with the tattooed man, and the two were talking. That's why we should keep a low profile. The situation is tense. Boss Ye's side is probably in conflict with our boss. Brothers, be careful. Don't lose an arm or a leg at any time. The person beside the tattooed man said. Hee, Bossy doesn't care about small fries like us. The tattooed man's voice sounded like he was laughing, but the laughter was very forced. In short, when they fight, we'll just pretend to be dead. Also, don't cause trouble. Don't get caught. I know that. Oh, wait, I need to pee, hee. As he said that, the tattooed man took a few steps forward and turned into a dead end. This was where the tattooed man went out or came back to pee. The dead end was very close to the corner where Jingtan was squatting. Jingtan could see the situation over there from the trash can. When the two people walked far away, Jingtan came out with the bag in his mouth and went to the tattooed man's house. He went in through the broken window in the kitchen. The house was no different from the first time Jingtan came here, dirty and messy as always. Without turning on the lights, Jingtan could see the layout of the house through the light from other people's houses outside the window. He took off the rubber band, opened the bag, tore open the ketchup, and smeared it on the toy cat. The toy cat also smeared some around its mouth. With the plastic bag as a cushion, the ketchup would not drip outside. Then, Jingtan put the toy cat smeared with ketchup at the tattooed man's bedside. This was just one of the things. He put the cotton swab in the bag in his palm. Compared to human fingers, the cat's palm was very inconvenient. Because of this, Jingtan would practice using his palm when he was bored at home. It took him a while to become proficient. Dipping the cotton swab in the remaining ketchup, Jingtan used the cotton swab to smear a red cat's paw on the wooden cabinet not far from the bed. Jingtan's drawing skills were limited, but it was just a few circles. As long as he could roughly see the paw of a cat or dog, it would be fine. Because the position of the wooden cabinet was a bit high for Jingtan, he dragged a stool over and stepped on it. Using his two hind legs to support himself, he stood up so that the height of the drawing position was more in line with his expectations. After finishing the drawing, Jingtan threw the cotton swab into the plastic bag, jumped up, and scratched a few claw marks in front of the cat's paw that he had drawn. Jingtan was very strong, and the claw marks he made were also very deep. After finishing, Jingtan pushed the stool back to its original position, took out a piece of tissue paper from the small bag, and wiped the stains on the ground and his own claws. He threw the used ketchup packet, cotton swab, and paper into the plastic bag. After thinking about it, Jingtan was about to leave when he turned around and lifted the bedsheet under the pillow to take a look. This was just something Jingtan did on a whim. When he was in the Jiao family, Jingtan once saw the Jiao Yuan hiding his pocket money under the mattress at the head of the bed. That was why he did this. The result really surprised Jingtan. The tattooed man had this habit too. Did he want to count his money and sleep? Jingtan counted. There were 800 yuan. Jingtan took out a 100 yuan note, rolled it up and wrapped it in tissue paper, and put the remaining 700 yuan back to its original position. After looking around and seeing that there was nothing else to do, Jingtan wrapped the plastic bag with a rubber band and tied it a few times. He also inserted the tissue paper into the rubber band to secure it. Then, he left the tattooed man's house with the money in his mouth. After walking out of the alley, Jingtan found a trash can and took out the money from the bundle. He threw the plastic bag into the trash can, and then went to a gift shop with the money in his mouth. He used some items from outside to climb into the second-floor warehouse. He took out the tissue paper and threw the 100 yuan note on the ground. As for the tissue paper, he casually threw it out the window. After doing all this, Jingtan returned to the east side courtyard, put on the access card, and entered the building. In fact, Jingtan also wanted to know the tattooed man's reaction. Unfortunately, the Jiao family had been resting very early recently. Everyone went to bed around 10 o'clock. The Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo went to bed at 9:30. Zheng Tan could not go home too late. Knowing that Zheng Tan went out to play every night, the Jiao Ma did not close the door. Zheng Tan only had to open the door when he went home. He did not have to unlock it himself, which saved him a lot of trouble. After returning home, Zheng Tan took a bath in the warm water the Jiao Ma prepared for him. He squatted on a stool and let the Jiao Ma dry his hair. Then, he went to sleep in his room. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, the gift shop outside the school was about to close. The owner followed his usual routine and went to the warehouse upstairs to check if anything valuable was missing. When the owner of the gift shop came to the second-floor warehouse, he saw the 100 yuan note on the ground. He looked around and did not hear any of the employees say that the money was missing. After thinking about it, he squatted down and quickly picked up the note and put it in his pocket. He did not ask the delivery person or the employees if the money was missing. He casually scanned the shelves in the warehouse to see if anything big or valuable was missing. The owner did not pay much attention to the other small things. Seeing that nothing valuable was missing, the owner of the gift shop hummed a little tune and left. He was very happy that he had picked up 100 yuan for free. However, the owner did not know that his warehouse had been visited by a black cat many times. It had even taken away a few dolls in batches. He did not know what it would take in the future. The 100 yuan was just the cat's consolation money. At around 4 o'clock in the morning, the tattooed man came home with the smell of alcohol. He was not a meticulous person, so he did not notice the subtle things in his house. He did not notice that the house was different from usual. Yawning, the tattooed man kicked off his shoes and lay on the bed. He habitually took out the 800 yuan note under the mattress and counted it. He had accumulated the money from the protection fees he had collected from the students who had set up the street stalls. He purposely kept the newer 800 yuan note under the mattress and counted it every day. It was one of his little fetishes, just for the sake of good luck. Just as Zheng Tan expected, the tattooed man liked to count money and sleep. 800 yuan was not 8,000 yuan. He could count it all in a few seconds. Missing 100 yuan? The tattooed man frowned. He licked his fingers and counted them again. Slowly and carefully, he counted them one by one. It was still 700 yuan. That was not right. The tattooed man irritably spat on the ground. He did not seem to have taken any money when he went out tonight. Was it a thief? Who would dare to steal from here? Did they want to die? The tattooed man thought that he was the tyrant of this generation. Besides, if there was a thief, he would not have taken only 100 yuan. The tattooed man was puzzled. He tried to recall what he had done before he went out today, but he still did not remember taking any money. Scratching his head, the tattooed man lay down and turned over to continue his memory. However, when he turned over, he found a toy cat doll covered in blood next to him. F***CK. The tattooed man jumped up in fright. It was not that he was making a fuss. It was just that the clubhouse had not been peaceful recently. A few days ago, one of the clubhouse's guards had his hand chopped off. Several other people were also injured. It was quite serious. The bloody scene at that time had stimulated him. This was not a cat, but a human, a real person. So now, when he saw this blood-red thing, he could not help but have goosebumps. Recently, the restaurant did not order sweet and sour pork tenderloin. After a few quick breaths, the tattooed man looked around. Then, his eyes stopped on the wooden wardrobe. Chapter 51. The tattooed man felt that he must have offended someone. Ever since he came home that day, he saw the toy cat smeared with ketchup on the bed, the red pattern on the wooden wardrobe that looked like an animal's footprint, and the deep scratches on the wooden wardrobe. The tattooed man began to wonder who he had offended. There were too many people who were suspicious. After all, they would definitely offend someone as a caretaker. Especially the recent conflicts between several forces, they were all suspicious. However, it was hard to determine who would do this in a short time. After all, those people's methods would be more direct and bloody, and would not just use ketchup. The people around him? The tattooed man shook his head. He had lived here for several years, and the people around him were all soft-hearted. He had called people to beat up and intimidate a few of the more stubborn ones. After that, those people stopped challenging him. However, it was not absolutely impossible. Who could it be? The tattooed man could not figure it out. He poked the toy cat smeared with ketchup with a knife and threw it into the garbage. As for the scratches on the wooden wardrobe, after wiping them, he covered them with several layers of newspaper. In addition, the tattooed man also changed the lock of his house. He felt that someone must have gotten the key to his house or used some means to unlock the door. The next day, the tattooed man returned home at the same time. When he was about to unlock the door, he held a steel rod in his other hand. He was afraid that someone would be in the house. However, before he could insert the key into the keyhole, he felt that he had stepped on something. There was no light outside the door, and at this time, the other residents were already asleep. It was dark all around. Only the circle of light from the flashlight in his armpit shone on the door lock. Just now, he was so focused on the door lock that he did not pay attention to what was on the ground outside the door. The tattooed man had a bad feeling. He threw the key into his pocket and shone the flashlight down. There was a furry toy cat doll at the door. It was smaller than the one yesterday. Its fur should have been white, but there were some red marks on it, especially around the cat's mouth. The tattooed man's hands trembled. However, after watching over someone's house for so long, he was not necessarily a coward. So, he opened the door and walked into the house. The house was still the same as before. There were no scratches on the wooden wardrobe, and there were no suspicious marks on the surrounding ground. The tattooed man relaxed a lot. It seemed that changing the door lock was useful. In fact, Jing Tan had also entered the house this time, but after he saw that the door lock was changed, he did not put anything in the house, nor did he do anything in the house. What if the tattooed man got anxious and sealed the broken window? They just came here to play. They probably didn't expect that after the new year, there would be no more cats here. The tattooed man, who had been sensitive to the word cat recently, would pick up things and throw them at the cats to chase them away when he saw them running around at night. He couldn't sleep well at home, and he started to have nightmares. During the day, when the tattooed man went out, his eyes were bloodshot. Recently, the residents around the old residential area had also noticed that something was wrong with the tattooed man. In the past, this person used to walk with his nose up in the air, but recently, when he looked at people, he seemed a little strange, as if he was suspicious of something. If you opened your mouth to ask, the tattooed man would roar back at you with an unfriendly expression, as if he would beat you up in the next moment. Therefore, recently, when people in the old building area saw the tattooed man, they would take a detour and never meet him face to face. This man must have a mental problem, and there was no guarantee that he would do something wrong. On the fifth day, Jing Tan didn't bring a toy cat. He only brought a small bag wrapped in several layers. This time, Jing Tan didn't hold the small bag in his mouth. Instead, he put a wide rubber band around his neck, and the small bag was tied to the rubber band. Jing Tan tried to run a few steps, but it didn't drop. Although it wasn't very comfortable, Jing Tan really didn't want to hold it in his mouth. Jing Tan was also afraid of this thing. Even if it was wrapped in a bag, it still felt uncomfortable, so it was better not to touch his mouth. Jing Tan's ability to use his hands wasn't strong, so he could only think of this simple way to carry it. There were a few small mushroom-like things in the bag. These things were obtained by Jing Tan from Old Man Land's small flower garden. The flower shed where these things were planted had strict temperature and humidity control, so the door of the flower shed was usually tightly shut. However, because Jing Tan went there often, He knew that Old Man Lawn would take samples of the soil in the flower shed one day every week to check the pH level and the change in the soil element ratio. After all the flower sheds were sampled, Old Man Lawn would close the door of the flower shed. Zheng Tan took advantage of the time when Old Man Lawn went to the other flower sheds to take samples. Zheng Tan had only found out about these plants when she overheard Old Man Lawn instructing his students when she came here to play. Only then did she know that these plants were planted in a few special flower sheds. The mushroom-like things that Zheng Tan found weren't from Huaxia. They were imported. Old Man Lawn got some from a friend. Because these plants were symbiotic, Old Man Lawn purposely planted some other species in the flower shed. Because of the size of the flower shed, he couldn't plant very big trees.